So we're back. We're back on YouTube, yes?
Welcome to the 20-minute tip-off show.
Little technical difficulties today. Not sure what happened there, but hope you're still with us. We're going to get into now to biggest bat, biggest arm, heading to the diamond for some of tonight's MLB DFS top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper. Which do you think is the best overall bet to hit a home run tonight? First up, we've got Joey Gallo plus 250, Mike Trout plus 275, Garcia plus 290, Belt plus 300, Meadows plus 300. Eric, let's start with you here.
So I just wanted to take a second. The Giants have absolutely gone nuts. And I don't really, there's no logical explanation I have for these dudes who are super, super old, who are just absolutely smashing the baseball here at the moment. Going down the line, Darren Ruff, he's a power guy, 298 ISO. Buster Posey has a 287 ISO this year. Mike Yastrzemski, 279. Brandon Crawford, 275. Brandon Belt, 262. I think all 5 going up against Luis Castillo right now. So I was trying to figure out what exactly is going on with Luis Castillo. And considering this game isn't on the main slate, the main 14-game slate for MLB, I think it does make a great spot if you can find some bets and find some value, either extracting, like Luis Castillo is a pitcher I've always believed in, but we've seen that velocity now drop a mile and a half on his four-seamer that he throws that right at around 50% of the time. So that's an important pitch, and he's losing the velocity on it. Maybe just running a little poorly this year, but not really. I mean, he's just he doesn't have it at the moment. You're going into Great American Ballpark. Like, I'm very excited about not only the ballpark, but I can't really explain where all this power surge came from for the Giants, but my God, is it actually a thing right now? So Buster Posey's only played 27 games. He's not quite like to the point where he qualifies, but otherwise he'd be sitting there with like right around, what is his average? 362 on the entire season. As I said, 287 ISO. I think every single Giant is in play from a plus prop point. So Brandon Belt, he's the guy who's getting the most odds, and yet he's 5th on his own team in ISO. I think kind of running to the window and betting a couple of these Giants is actually a good way to go today.
All right. So your answer, kind of somebody who's not even listed there. You listed the guys and they answered somebody differently.
But give me Darren Ruff. How about that?
I'm going to go with Brandon Belt also, though. I would go with Mike Trout. That's usually my default answer, except I don't think he's going to play today. Left yesterday's game with an injury, and I assume they're going to be cautious with him and hold him out. Adolis Garcia and Joey Gallo, one of the issues I had with them is that, number one, they're on the same team, and I think that Jameson Taillon has pitched much better than his ERA indicates this year, and I expect some positive regression from him. So then I'm just kind of left looking at what's left, and Austin Meadows for sure, great matchup against Matt Harvey. So, actually I'll say Austin Meadows just because it's an answer different from yours, but I think Brandon Belt is fine at plus 300 also. But yeah, I mean, Austin Meadows, the Rays are going to be the chalk of the day for MLB DFS going up against Matt Harvey, and a team that I'm a little wary of how much they're getting roster right now, but Austin Meadows' individual prop looks the most favorable to me.
Okay, now for biggest arm, which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best strikeouts over bet tonight? And is there a good under bet that you like? First, we've got Blake Snell with 7.5, not to be confused with Black Snell, which is what's on the run sheet. Lance Lynn, 7.5. Brandon Woodruff, 6.5. Andrew Heaney, 6.5. Louis Castillo, 5.5. Greg.
Yeah, I didn't even pick up that it said Black Snell. I was just kind of looking at the names, glancing over. Yeah, well, you're the one. You are the one who wrote it. Yeah, it does say Blake now. I tried to highlight it and change it there, except I apparently don't have editing capabilities. Eric did not grant me that.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah, unfortunately. Brandon Woodruff over 6.5 looks like the pretty easiest over to me. I mean, Woodruff has just been ridiculous this year, and that Brewers starting rotation as a whole, Freddie Peralta, Corbin Burns, and Brandon Woodruff, it just seems every day these guys are kind of one-upping each other. And frankly, I mean, all 3 of them might be top 5 NL Cy Young candidates right now because the Brewers have absolutely no offense whatsoever. But the reason they're still in the playoff picture at this point in the season is just because of how good their starting pitching is. So Brandon Woodruff, I think it's a little curious that his K total is all the way down at 6.5, given how good his stuff is and how many strikeouts he's generating, not just this year, but basically for his entire career. There was a point in time where his pitch count was a little limited, but that's also not an issue anymore. So Brandon Woodruff, to me, that one looks egregiously low.
I'm not going to do the thing where you switched off Austin Meadows. I mean, my guy here is definitely Brandon Woodruff as well. Going back to last year, combining with this year, 0.87 whip, 10.84 strikeouts per nine, just gigantic numbers on him. Been so good. And as you said, this entire staff has just been nails. They're definitely the reason, even with Yelich out for that period of time there, that now with his back issues, that they're just going to be able to hang around, because when you have a starting rotation that is this good, him and Corbin Burns as a 1-2 is just kind of unfair right now. And so I'm going to be taking the over easily here. I know it's KC. This feels like a great spot to be betting the over.
All right, now we head back to the NBA for No House Advantages prop or not. Here are some of No House Advantages props of the day for key NBA players. Do we like the over or under on these props, and how many points would you assign? First up, we talked about him earlier, Tristan Thompson, 11.5 points plus assists. Eric.
So this comes down to, first of all, we're going to just see Robert Williams probably get in there. But right now, if you go over to Odd Shopper as well, if you just take a look at our NBA odds page, and then you jump over to the player props market and group it based on points, and you have expected win percentage, expected ROI, earlier in the day. I think it's changed a little bit since then, but Tristan Thompson was somebody who was popping up meaningfully there in the projections. He's still at an expected win percentage of 61%, so that's nothing to scoff at. He was one of the higher guys on the board, but still getting that over. I mean, if you get the over of 7.5 points at a number of those books, that's a nice way to go. And then we're taking that information and we're translating it directly into NHA. So we get those player projections. Those are free every single day. The free lineups every single day. You can go out and check those out on the Osmo page for the NBA projections. But just kind of like going back and forth between that Odd Shopper page and the NHA page, I like to kind of compare where they're going at in the markets there, and seeing that 7.5 is one of the better overs on the board. I think that points plus assists definitely still something to take a part of. Assists are actually even a little bit higher, 1.5 there. The over on that is coming in with a 96% over. So I think that that's not a bad way to go either. But like the prop over on Odd Shopper, and I like the over here for points and assists on NHA.
Yeah, so, well, one thing is we did get a projection update, and now we have Tristan Thompson, 71% likely to be the under on his points plus assists.
Oh, my gosh.
So I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to look at it more, but I think that might have been more minutes allocated towards Robert Williams now. Maybe that's what it is, but I'd have to look at it a little closer. But I have Tristan Thompson also projected to go under that number. As an overall DFS play, I think he's a good value, but it's not a good value in the sense of generally like, hey, here's this great cheap guy who should smash. It's that we have a 2-game slate. Pretty much all of the cheap guys are relatively crappy options, because as of now, I'm expecting mostly everybody to play. Obviously, Karis LeVert was ruled out, but I think a lot of the offense still as of now is going to run through Domantas Sabonis. But what makes Tristan Thompson really good DFS value is just that there aren't other cheap players that we're going to expect to play big minutes at this point of the season. But I just look at that 11.5 prop right now that we have for Tristan Thompson. Also, I don't expect him to be getting many assists anyway. So, I mean, we're looking at, like you said, most books have him at a 1.5 assist prop. And then we have to look at the points for Tristan Thompson. And even in recent games without Robert Williams, it's not like he's going out and scoring, massive amounts of points every game. He's scored over 10 points twice since April 19th. So it's hard for me to really expect Tristan Thompson to be able to reliably hit the over on that number. So give me the under.
Yeah, I just did the refresh on that as well. I think this is just kind of a stay away for the most part at this point in time if you're going to be playing on NHA. And it's a great site to go get a little extra exposure, especially a day like today where pricing is more difficult. I think you bring up a great point in terms of what the value is going to look like today. But Tristan Thompson, probably a guy that I probably wouldn't want to be on the over or under of. And I think that that's reflected a little bit. But yeah, going to that under here now that we're getting a little bit of a minutes bump for Robert Williams, definitely probably the way to go.
And speaking of Robert Williams, 17.5 points plus rebounds, Greg.
Yeah, so I mean, I like Robert Williams as a pivot play in DFS just based on ownership, but I mean, this number to me is still way too high because we haven't seen Robert Williams play in a little bit. So while I think that there is significant upside in him as a tournament play, I think that it's a very low percentage outcome. And I still think the most likely scenario here is that Tristan Thompson plays more of the center minutes, Robert Williams spells him off the bench, and then it's probably going to be something like, I don't know, maybe Tristan Thompson plays 24 minutes, Robert Williams plays 20 minutes, and then maybe the rest of the minutes the Celtics do something like play a little bit of small ball to make up the other minutes. And that's also going to depend on the score of the game. Certainly if the Celtics are down, they're going to play more small ball to get more shooting on the court. But I just think that number is really high for Robert Williams, especially considering we haven't seen him play all that much lately.
Yeah, even with the minutes bump, even with the updated projections, it's still looking like a pretty darn good under. I think that just also speaks to the fact that they're going to be splitting those minutes. We don't know what it's going to look like. There is that possibility of a small ball lineup for sure, especially if you're getting Sabonis off the floor at any point in time, which, he's going to play as many minutes as he possibly can should he be good to go, which I'm currently expecting. Brogdon feels like more of the question mark to me, but yeah, Robert Williams, those numbers, it also speaks to the kind of advantage you can have over an NHA by simply being on top of the news and being on top of what you think that what the center minutes could look like, because these props don't change the way they are over on the prop market, like the way they will on OddsShopper at all the different sports books that are listed. These numbers are constant. They are stagnant. They do not change. So I still like this under on Robert Williams there.
And lastly, we have Malik Monk, 12.5 points, Eric.
Yeah, this is the 10-pointer for me. So Malik Monk basically not even going to be a part of this rotation going forward here for this game. You're getting Graham back. You're getting all these guys. Like, he's going to play a couple minutes here and there, possibly 3,300. He played 6 minutes in that meaningful game against Washington. If they had won, they could have been they still would have been the 9 seed, but could have stopped Washington. That would have been their first round matchup with them, or excuse me, their 9-10 matchup. So playing only 6 minutes there really kind of speaks to what this playoff rotation is going to look like. And so 15 minutes there against New York, I think that's more indicative. Like, he could play right around that number, like as a cap, but I don't see him getting over that. And so with this big of a number, this is easily my my favorite prop on the day to be taking an under on.
Yeah, the key here is that the Hornets are finally healthy again, right? So we have LaMelo Ball back in action. He's been back for a little bit now, and we have Devontae Graham back, which really hurt Malik Monk's playing time. Here's his minutes over the last handful of games: 9, 22, 18, 14, 15, and then, like Eric said, 6 minutes last game. So we haven't seen him score more than 8 points in a game since the 6th against the Bulls, and that was a game that was a blowout, so he ended up playing extended minutes. So it's really hard for me to think that number one Malik Monk is going to play even any significant minutes in this game, especially when I'm expecting LaMelo Ball to see a little bit of an uptick in his playing time. So totally agree. I think this is the under and the one to have the most confidence in.
And as always, friends, don't forget to play on No House Advantage, our sponsor, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code AWESOMO to receive a deposit bonus of up to $20 for new signups. Be your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. That'll bring us right on into good dog, bad dog.
I can hear it.
Loud and clear today, Jordan. Woo!
Let's go.
Yeah,
our stream might have crashed, but at least we can hear the dogs barking.
Yeah,
I don't even see Jordan.
No, it's a give and a take, right? So we get the sound effects, but nobody's allowed to watch us, and the show isn't live. Like I don't even know where we're streaming. Like, this isn't even on Twitch anymore.
Yeah, this is on OnlyFans.
Yeah.
Oh shoot! Oh my gosh.
Could you imagine?
The YouTube chat wishes.
Oh my God. Yeah, because I mean, it's obviously for Greg and I for sure, but
yeah.
I get that. I get that.
Well, in real life, there's no such thing as a bad dog. In betting and DFS, there are a lot of other dogs. There's just no easy way to transition there. There are a lot of other dogs who may have no chance in their game. So who's a good dog to target tonight? And who's a bad one? Greg, give us your good dog first.
So this is going to come with a caveat, is right now the Charlotte Hornets are underdogs to the Indiana Pacers. And we've talked about all the injuries the Pacers are dealing with right now. We currently have Sabonis is questionable. We've said we expect him to play, but then Brogdon is questionable. Edmund Sumner is questionable. Aaron Holiday is questionable. If something crazy happens and Sabonis gets ruled out, or if just these other guys get ruled out, then I think the Charlotte Hornets are pretty clearly the best underdog play. And then with that said, I mean, we're only picking between two of them. And just given the injury situation with the Pacers, the Charlotte seems like the pretty obvious pick.
I also, and it's something that I've seen some sharp line movement on here. When this line opened yesterday, I smashed the under on the Pacers and Hornets as well. I think come playoff time, there's a little less willy-nilly. There's going to be some more stout defense. 231 was a gigantic number for it to open on. Jumping over to OddsShopper, so not to change the question, but I'm right there with you. Like, Charlotte would be definitely a team that I want exposure to. We really only have two dogs over there, so going over there, I like the under of this game. 226 is still kind of where it looks like it's coming around at most books. So give me the under of that. That would actually be my good dog going along with that 2 points that Charlotte's getting right now. I would want all of that in the world should all those Pacers get ruled out.
Okay, Eric, now give us your bad dog.
So my bad dog, I don't mean to do this to you, but it's going to be Washington. It's going to be against Russell Westbrook. And I like Russell Westbrook from a DFS perspective today, but I only have two choices really to be making. I mean, I could go over to the MLB streets, but I don't want to be kind of like, you know what, actually, I will go over to the MLB streets if you want me to,
Thank
just
you.
because I saw you gasp and I want to be friends with you going forward. And I don't want you to be mad at me. So why don't we go with, I'll go with the San Francisco Giants currently. They're coming in right around plus 110. I talked about all the concerns I have over Luis Castillo, and his fastball still right around 96.2%, 96.2 miles per hour. Back in 2018, he still had effective strikeout stuff and had a little bit slower velocity than that, but he's coming down from 97.6 miles per hour last season. It's dropped a mile and a half there, and he's just got no confidence, no control. He's had one decent start in the middle of all lousy starts, basically, this entire season. He's been so bad. Still has a win share above average, which is absurd. It's like 0.2 win share, but I like going against Luis Castillo in this spot. This Giants team, I have no idea what's going on. I have absolutely no clue, but they're hitting for some crazy powers. So give me them with plus money.
Yeah, so to me, the bad dog today is the Minnesota Twins. So right before we started, Michael Pineda got scratched, and they are starting some guy named Bailey Ober is making his MLB debut today. And I was looking up some information on him right before we started because I was betting on the White Sox as soon as there was a starting pitching change made for the Twins. So Bailey Ober, non-prospect in the Twins organization. He was what was a Rule 6? I forget what the draft, Rule 6 draft, I think it's called. But anyway, non-prospect in the organization. He's 6'9" and throws 86 miles per hour. He has decent enough numbers in the minor leagues, but a lot of those numbers not totally up to date just because we don't have minor league numbers from last year. And just reading some of the scouting profile on him, we have a guy who also complains that his entire body hurts after he makes starts, and apparently would prefer to be a relief pitcher. But he's going to be starting today for the Twins. No data on him other than that he's a 6'9" and throws 86 miles per hour. So give me the Chicago White Sox after they crushed the Twins last night also. And one of the other reasons that's important is because Eric here really seems like he wants to get a word in, but something else that's important here is that given how badly the Twins bullpen got beat up yesterday by the White Sox overall, they're already thin in the pen, and just this guy making his MLB debut, I think it could be an issue.
Oh, you can read my mind. It's incredible how that works. I saw a stat yesterday that just, I mean, I'm a Twins fan. This is definitely we went from so good to so bad very, very quickly. And, not having Buxton in there right now on the IL is very, very hurtful. He was hiding a lot of holes early on in this season, but Willians Astudillo, as some of you may know, the Turtle, our backup catcher, basically can play multi-positions, but Willians Astudillo has a 4.5 ERA this season, which is better than 12 of our 19 pitchers that have appeared in a game this season. That's really, really bad. Bet the White Sox.
Okay, good to know. Really quickly, last minute of the show. Eric, give us your make or break and fade of the day back to back.
Make or break. Russell Westbrook, definitely for me. I'm very, very high. I think I understand the concerns for some of this value. I'm not sure what those minutes are going to look like for anybody on Indiana right now. It's kind of a fool's errand to try to figure out exactly what I'm going to do, but I know I'm going to have Justin Holiday and Doug McDermott at pieces of value. I think that's enough on DraftKings and FanDuel for me to want to be way overweight on Russell Westbrook. Maybe not the 100% I was advocating for earlier. I do understand how, on a 10-game slate, you're going to get value that makes it easy to plug in Russell Westbrook. This is going to be more difficult, but he's definitely my make or break. And then fade of the day. I'm going to be a little bit lower on Domantas Sabonis, whether or not he's in this game. It's a playoff game. That means that he can't necessarily just go out and just build up stats and do things the way that he was earlier. It's a game that has to be played straight up. And if he's actually banged up, you could be looking at a guy who's very, very highly owned coming in and being in a good spot.
All right. So for me, fade of the day, Ish Smith, at least before we started, he was projecting for a decent amount of ownership on FanDuel and DraftKings, which is something I really didn't understand. I understand that he's relatively cheap. He also had a big game last time out, but Paulo Neto was out. And now Neto is back. That's going to really decrease Ish Smith's minutes. He scored over 30 fantasy points last game, but it was only the second time he's done that all year. So I definitely don't expect a repeat performance. So I could see a lot of people looking at the 3,900 price tag on Ish Smith and expecting something similar to happen again, but probably not going to be the case. So to me, he's somebody to avoid. Make or break. For baseball, it's probably going to be the Rays. I think that they are overall the best offense to target if we were just looking at the slate in a vacuum. But the issue is that they're wildly popular right now. So to me, the ownership of them is a little bit too high, and I'd rather be underweight to them.
Fabulous. Excellent stuff from you both, as always. A little bumpy today, but thank you all for hanging with us through those technical difficulties. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to NBA Deeper Dive and Live Before Locker coming your way next. We will be back with you here on the tip-off tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. Greg, Eric, this was fun, as always. Guys, we'll see you tomorrow.
like that, El Negro Loco, throwing up the emoji straight before we drop live. Good stuff. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive. It is the play-in round. Regular season finally over, but we're not going anywhere. I guess I inadvertently or unintentionally lied to everyone saying that Adam and I would be switching straight to baseball. That is not the case. And I'm kind of happy about it because, well, there's still huge contests tonight. There's a $300,000 showdown contest alone on DraftKings. So, yeah, we have a lot to get into. I'm Dave Loughran on the Twitters at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D, joined by Adam Scher at Ship My Money DFS, talking Charlotte, Indiana, Washington, Boston, and we got some serious pending news for such a short slate, man.
Yeah, fortunately, most of it or all of it basically is in the first game. So the slate would be a lot different if these start times were flipped around. But yeah, get big news on Indiana makes it kind of tough to talk about with any certainty right now. But we are starting to get a little bit of news trickling in there, and then every other team, pretty straightforward, I think.
It's kind of funny how when you play basketball over the last month with how wild things have been, you kind of get used to it being this type of sport for DFS purposes where there's just insanity every night and it's just stars and scrubs every single night. And if you want to play three guys at 3K to 4K, you could do that easily. You could even grab four of them if you want and put yourself in favorable spots per tournaments. But that's not really what NBA DFS is most of the season. And it's kind of easy to forget about that. Now, today is on the complete opposite side of the spectrum. But when you look at this slate and you say, okay, well, a lot of this value isn't really good value to begin with. I'm going to have to make decisions and actually ask myself whether or not Russell Westbrook at 13K or 12.4 is viable. That's what basketball is usually like. And we're kind of getting back to that tonight now that the regular season's over.
Yeah, for sure. Like I wrote the deep dive, I mentioned that Westbrook was expensive, but that I would still try and find some way to get him into my lineups because it's Westbrook. And then I started, building lineups after I wrote it and was like, man, this is actually tough.
Yeah.
Because it's not like, oh, I have to go from, I have to make like one play that I'm kind of uncomfortable with, but it gets me Westbrook. Like there's a couple of things that make this slate different because for one, it's 2 games, so there's fewer value options. But the other thing you need to keep in mind when you talk about, Westbrook specifically, but also these pay up options, just as like an overarching theme here is that with this essentially being the playoffs, you're getting like mid-range guys that in the regular season would play 32, 33 minutes. They're going to play 38 minutes, 37 minutes. The gap that you get like Sabonis and Westbrook, normally part of their value is that they're going to play 4 or 5 minutes more than every other player on the slate. That's not the case on a slate like this. You're going to get a lot of guys playing upper 30s. And so you're not necessarily getting all those extra minutes for the expensive guys either.
For sure. Got all our friends in chat today ready to make this happen. Happy to have you guys with us. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. R. Stanley, the popes where are the 2 popes of DFS? Ryan says the Pope of DFS and the King of Bumble. Going to be a great day. There's a lot coming in here. Our boy Dave took down a nice tournament the other day, or came in top 5 or whatever. Had a great day. We'll get to that in a little bit as well at the Hall of Fame segment. But more importantly, guys, hit that thumbs up. First thing you do when you jump in here, don't make the ratio so embarrassing that I can't go downstairs to my wife and kids after the show. And hit that subscribe button as well if you haven't done so yet. If you hate it, just to hit unsubscribe afterwards. It's a simple solution. We will refund your misery free of charge, but I don't think you'll want to do that. And if you're wondering what those badges are, what those cool emojis are, and all that good stuff, well, you want to join, hit that join button, become a member here at Awesemo. Like I said, it doesn't matter if you do or don't, but it's a cool community and we'd love to have you be a part of it. So let's dive into it. Charlotte at Indiana. We got the play-in game here. It is a must-win game, Adam, and Malcolm Brogdon we'll get to in just a moment. But if he plays, he'll be limited to 5 or 6 minutes per rotation, which means he'll play 40 minutes if the game is close. I saw someone mention that in chat. Totally right. But starting it off with Charlotte, Gordon Hayward out. Maybe they were hoping he'd be back by now, but that is not the case. Cody Martin is out as well. Aside from that, you're getting essentially the same Charlotte team that we'd been looking at. But I don't want to start with LaMelo or Graham or Rozier. I want to start in the front court with Cody Zeller, who's played 36 and 30 minutes over his last 2 games respectively, and is popping up right now as one of the premier value options on this slate, kind of just going to show you what we're dealing with as far as cheap options go.
Yeah, and I think that it makes sense, you know, that Zeller is one of the highest owned values because he has been playing more minutes. You know, last game he went back to the bench with Miles Bridges in the starting lineup, but he still played about 30 minutes. The game before that, Bridges came off the bench and Zeller started. Zeller played about 32 minutes or 34 minutes in regulation. So it makes sense he's getting ownership because he also is over a fantasy point per minute guy. The concern, and this is more so for people playing tournaments than cash games, there's no guarantee that you get those minutes again tonight for Zeller. Like if you look at the last game for Charlotte, PJ Washington played 30 minutes. He didn't close that game. If PJ Washington closes in place of Zeller, you're taking like 4 to 5 minutes off of Zeller right there. So I think the playing time is still volatile, even though, you know, we're hoping that he gets close to 30 minutes. There's still plenty of ways that doesn't happen, and that at high ownership, he ends up being somewhat disappointing. But, you know, I still think that just based on the rotations we've seen recently from Charlotte, you know, my expectation is you're getting at least mid-20s from him with the potential for more if he does close again.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'll tell you this much. I actually kind of like the over 7.5 rebounds here as well. If you're taking a look at this one, he is around the 12 rebound per 36 guy. Now, the big problem I have whenever betting on props with someone like Cody Zeller, and you could speak to this as well, not just him, but in the same mold as Cody Zeller, is I feel so much more comfortable hitting props, whether it be the over or the under, when I have a better read on what their playing time is going to look like. So if I was looking at Cody Zeller and saying he's getting 30 minutes here, I'd be all over that, hitting the over on 7.5 rebounds, just because it makes sense. But I don't know if he's going to play 24 minutes, especially with Borrego being, you know, bipolar from a rotation standpoint and now going into the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I would point out with respect to the prop, and, you know, again, take it for what it's worth. It's just, you know, my projection on Zeller, but I would have to, like, with the rates that I have in for Zeller, I would have to knock him down to 22 minutes for him to get to 7.5 rebounds. So like, even if he plays like 26 minutes, I think it's an easy over. And then, you know, of course there's room for even more minutes than that.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Like if you're just in terms of projections, and he's averaging about 7 rebounds in 21 minutes this season already. But it is, I don't know, 7.5. I guess it's nice against Indy. We'll get to some for the Pacers as well. What are you doing with LaMelo and Rozier in the backcourt here?
Yeah, I think both of those guys look good. LaMelo is really interesting to me because it's not a guarantee, but I'd be pretty surprised if he doesn't play more minutes tonight than we've seen recently. And he's only projected for 25% ownership on DraftKings right now, which is, I think, pretty low for someone who has averaged 1.3 DraftKings points per minute in these games without Hayward. He's in a huge pace up spot against Indiana, who is second in pace over the last month. We saw him play 33.5 minutes against Washington last game. That wasn't a must win, but it was certainly a game the Hornets wanted to win. And that was also the most minutes he played in any of his last 5 games. But he still, like, his first half rotation was still a little bit short. Like, there were still a lot of minutes potentially available. It would be pretty surprising to me if LaMelo doesn't play a couple extra minutes tonight, you know, with this being a must-win game. You know, when you think about it logically, you know, yeah, maybe they're trying not to play him massive minutes, but what's the difference between 36 minutes and 34 minutes? Like there really isn't one. And having him out there for any extra minutes that you can is certainly beneficial for this team. So I think LaMelo is a really, really strong play tonight. And then Terry Rozier, you kind of know what you're getting there. You know, he's going to play about 40 minutes. He's going to average about a fantasy point per minute. And he's still at a price point where that's very good for his salary. So I think that there's other guys priced around them I like a little bit more, LaMelo actually being one of them. But, you know, I think that Rozier is still a pretty good player.
See a couple comments saying Laffy was supposed to shave his face. Yes, I mentioned this on the strategy show. It's happening. I'm doing it tomorrow. I see Jordan laughing over there. Don't drink a lot of alcohol. Go out on a boat and wear your hat backwards without sunscreen for 5 hours. Okay. Just because it was May didn't make a difference. I mean, you can actually see, you see the hat mark? See the hat? See the
kind of. Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah, you can see it.
You can see it. It is wildly embarrassing. But my face was so burnt that I couldn't touch it, let alone. Can you imagine taking a razor to like a sun? I couldn't do it. So I'll be back tomorrow. We'll make it happen. And it's going to look ridiculous. I mean, I already had the sunglasses tan, and now this is just going to be straight.
Yeah,
white.
so I can see the eyes now too that you mentioned.
Oh, yeah. I looked like a raccoon. So it'll be there. I didn't forget about it, but I would have hurt myself. I would have been in a lot of pain. So bear with me. Give me a break. Malachor says, sure. Listen, I swear it was bad. I'm a highly irresponsible person. So you should, if you know me, you know that's very possible. And then I get yelled at when I get home. What do you want to talk about outside of LaMelo Rozier and Cody Zeller once we get into some of these other guys? Like Washington and Bridges are both priced up to a point. That's another thing, not to sidetrack this, but like there's not a lot of value. Russell Westbrook's expensive. And then you have 4 Charlotte players at 7,000 or higher on DraftKings.
Yeah, the pricing is tight tonight. I think, if you're playing tournaments, I think it actually will be a pretty fun slate for a 2-gamer because the lineups are pretty tough to put together. Even working on my cash lineup, there's definitely spots where I'm just like, man, I really don't want to play this guy, but I kind of need to. But I think that slates like that are fun for tournaments because you can pivot off of some pretty questionable popular plays and take some risks elsewhere. But yeah, the pricing is tight. I do think that this is one spot where I wouldn't want more than 2 of Bridges, Washington, and Zeller in my lineup together. I think it's very likely that all 3 of Ball, Rozier, and Graham close this game. So it only leaves room for 2 of those guys in the closing lineup. Bridges led the team last game with just shy of 40 minutes. You certainly can see 38 to 40 minutes from him again. He's been just shy of a fantasy point per minute guy. So I think he's still a reasonable option. FanDuel, I think he looks a little bit better because small forward is a really, really bad position tonight. So getting those minutes from Miles Bridges is pretty appealing. And then PJ Washington, I just think is one of the bigger question marks because we know how productive he can be when he's playing center. He started at center last game. He's averaging over a fantasy point per minute when he's on the floor without any other center. If he were to get 36 minutes tonight, which is certainly possible, and most of those minutes are at center, he's probably going to do well even for that salary. The problem is, you only have to go back 1 game to see that he didn't close against Washington, only played 30 minutes. If you only get 30 minutes from Washington, it's pretty unlikely he outperforms the salary. So I think he's pretty risky. And then you get to Devontae Graham, who I think is sort of just there. Like the price point ends up being pretty useful on this slate, I think, just because he is a little bit less expensive. I'm expecting you get 30 to 32 minutes from Graham. He averages 0.9 to 1 fantasy point per minute. It is a good matchup. So, I think Graham's fine, but I think, if salary doesn't matter, I think Ball and Rozier look better at their prices than Rozier does or than Graham does at his. But because there is that discount, I could see where Graham just ends up being kind of useful.
Okay. Top options from Charlotte right now on both sides.
LaMelo, Rozier, and Zeller.
Okay. The Indiana side gets a little bit funky here. So we know that Sabonis is in. We know that Karis LeVert is out. And that's huge news here. Karis LeVert have been playing really well. I almost can't even help but think like, hey, if LeVert was in, does Brogdon sit? Or is it a bit higher potential that he sits? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But Karis LeVert not playing and expected to miss 10 to 14 days. I mean, that just sucks, man. Yeah, that really sucks because look, are they making it through the first round anyway? Very, very unlikely. But now a guy that's been playing as well as he has recently, particularly as a scorer and as a facilitator, a playmaker, taking him off the court just is such a dagger.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks too with everything he's gone through this year, and then they get to the play-in game.
Oh yeah, I forgot about all that. That wasn't great either.
Yeah, just from a personal standpoint.
Kick him while he's down, huh?
Right.
Well, anyway, we still got to talk about the Pacers. And with LeVert out, Brogdon is still not confirmed in. Let me just make sure there's nothing I missed here. So if he plays, he'll be doing so in 5 to 6 minute stints if he's cleared. Now, this can be misleading, Adam, because he could play 5 or 6 minutes. He could rest for 2 minutes, and then he could play another 5 or 6 minutes. I'm not necessarily saying that's what's going to happen, but in a playoff game, it's so tough to gauge this. He hasn't played since the 29th of April. It's a hamstring injury. It's not like a wrist or an upper body injury. There are some red flags here, but at the same time, is this a spot that maybe we can figure out a way to say Brogdon makes sense in some spots if he's cheap enough, like on FanDuel, or do we just stay away altogether on a 2-game slate, even if he's active?
The only argument I can really make for Brogdon at this point is it's a 2-game slate. And,
right.
So there is some uncertainty. So they say he's playing 5 to 6 minute stints to gauge his conditioning. Does that mean he's going to play 5 minutes, come out, say, yo, I'm good, and then go play the rest of the half?
Or does he play 5 or 6 minutes and then he sits for a couple minutes and he's right back and he still plays his regular minutes?
Right, exactly. So there's still enough. I think it's still vague enough, not to mention the fact that coaches do just blatantly lie. It's still vague enough where there's a greater than 0% chance that Brogdon just plays a ton of minutes tonight. It's not the most likely outcome. It's not close to the most likely outcome, I don't think, based on, the quotes and the fact that he hasn't played. But it's a 2-game slate. Malcolm Brogdon's a good fantasy producer, and there is some, ambiguity in how many minutes he's going to play. So that would be the argument for him. But it's still going to be really, really tough because, for one, he's expensive on DraftKings at 8,700. On FanDuel, he's cheap, but he's still the same price as LaMelo Ball. So, it's still really, really tough to get there. But that would be the reason I wouldn't say, like, you have to play zero Brogdon.
Yeah, I wouldn't have even brought it up if LeVert wasn't out. But now you take LeVert off the floor as well, and I don't know, things change a little bit because if Brogdon plays, say, 35 minutes and on FanDuel he's $7,300, now you're looking at a player that is, has been really good when on the floor, particularly without any of these top dogs or one of these top players. He's where's he at on a per minute basis? Only at 1.02 without LeVert and Miles Turner, but I don't really read too much into that. When you say you have 3 of the top players and you take one of them off the floor, it has to benefit somebody like Brogdon, especially considering LeVert's a capable ball handler along with Sabonis. So I do think LeVert's absence benefits him. It's just, is it enough?
Yeah, and I mean, you have to get lucky with the minutes. But again, it just goes back to, think about how it can play out. If Brogdon feels good, which, like, we're not going to know the truth on how he feels coming into this game, but it's if he feels fine, and he goes to the bench and he's like, I feel fine. What are they going to say? Like, yeah, that's good. We'll get him next year. Don't worry about it. We're still going to play 26 minutes today. So that's kind of what I keep coming back to, where even though it's not the most likely outcome, there is still a path to Brogdon just being normal, which, the news is going to knock the ownership down dramatically because people are going to assume, rightfully so, that he most likely doesn't play huge minutes. But, there's only so many spots on a 2-game slate that you can look to get good players at low ownership. So it still makes him kind of appealing. Where
are we going with Sabonis today? He's got a 45.5 point rebound and assist prop. And that was before and after the LeVert news. Nothing really changed all that much. He's been spectacular, leads the league in rebounds over the last month at north of 14 rebounds per game over that span. Not having Miles Turner in there also benefits him, but he's $10,000 on DraftKings, which really doesn't seem all that tough to get to at all, given how sharp some of the pricing is, and 10,300 on FanDuel. He's just been remarkably good, and his per minute production only goes from 1.44 to 1.41 when Brogdon's on the floor this season to begin with.
Yeah, I think Sabonis is actually one of the more underpriced guys today when you consider, like, the pricing being jacked up on those guys like Miles Bridges and PJ Washington. They didn't do the equivalent with Sabonis. They didn't make Sabonis $11K.
Right.
You have, a $2,600 gap between Sabonis and Westbrook on DraftKings, similar on FanDuel. And you're getting huge minutes here. Like, I'd feel a little bit more uncomfortable with him had he not played on Sunday, but he played almost 40 minutes on Sunday with the Q tag. They've already ruled him in tonight. So I'm expecting him to get another, 40 minutes or so. And he you mentioned Brogdon, he benefits too from Turner being out. He gets a lot more minutes at center, gets more rebounds, scores more. He just produces at a higher rate without Turner. So even if Brogdon coming back knocks him down a little bit, it's still a better spot than normal. And Sabonis' salary really didn't increase that much. So I still think Sabonis looks really good. The rest of this team, I think that even though it sounds weird, the statuses of Edmund Sumner and Aaron Holiday play a pretty big role here as well, because with how little value we have, if we get Edmund Sumner in and Holiday out, Sumner's going to look like a pretty good value at 3,400. If they're both in, Sumner is still going to be a decent value at 3,400, but he's going to be a lot riskier because he'll be competing with, Aaron Holiday potentially for minutes as well. But then you also have Justin Holiday, who's played 30 and 34 minutes the last 2 games. You have Doug McDermott, who played 20 minutes in the second half after LeVert's injury last game. If Sumner and Holiday are in, I think you probably get like 28 to 30 minutes from McDermott. Unless he's shooting lights out, he'll play more. But if those guys are out, you could easily be looking at 34 to 36 minutes from Doug McDermott.
So let's play this through for a second. What if both of them are out? Who benefits the most outside of McDermott?
If Sumner and Holiday are out, I think McDermott, Brissett, and Justin Holiday all just get a few more minutes, probably mid-30s, and just look like better options. McConnell potentially, getting more run as well, but that's also dependent on how many minutes Brogdon actually plays.
That's what I was going to ask you. If Brogdon actually does play, let's say 25 minutes, then you've got 23 for McConnell right there. Can McConnell get some additional minutes elsewhere to get him north of 30? Because he's a +1 per minute guy on the season, and we're talking about a 2-game slate here where no stone should be left unturned.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I don't, at his salary, I don't have a ton of confidence in him. I think the floor is relatively low for the salary, but there is certainly a path to 30 plus minutes for him. You look last game, of course, Brogdon was out, but he played the entire second half without LeVert. He played the final like 16 minutes of the first half. I think that there's a decent chance they play him alongside Brogdon enough to where, if you get like 30 minutes from Brogdon, you're getting 18 from McConnell when he's not on the floor. And then, it's certainly reasonable that they give him another 12 or so alongside Brogdon. So I think he's risky, but I do think that, there's still a path to him to have success. If Brogdon is out, just play McConnell and don't think twice.
For sure. Okay. Well, we've got a little bit more to get to, and then we can close this one out, talk Washington and Boston. I'll ask you this. If there's nothing else from Indiana, who are your top options on this side of the ball? Assuming right now that Sumner and Holiday are in.
Assuming they're in, Sabonis is the top guy for me. And then I'll mention McDermott, Holiday, and Sumner, not because I like them, but because they're cheap, and there's not a whole lot of cheap guys on this slate that have any chance at playing close to 30 minutes. So they're kind of just guys that are showing up. Like when I build cash lineups, they're showing up as guys that just fit in there. So they look good, but those are also the types of guys where if you are playing, like DraftKings has the 150K to first 35,000 person tournament on a 2-game slate. These are the kind of guys, the low per minute producers, where the industry kind of has a consensus, agreement that they're going to play 30 minutes or so, but we don't know that. I mean, if they play poorly, you could see other guys step up and play, or they could just play poorly and not, produce. Those are the kind of guys where in those large field tournaments, you really shouldn't be that afraid to take some risks and go somewhere else.
Okay. Well, we got one down, one to go. We'll keep it moving here. I tell you what, this is one of those games at Boston and Washington that could get wild tonight for a number of reasons. Before we get there, though, I should probably point out that we have 2 amazing promos going on right now. First one, Gold Rush, all one word, get you 25% off everything on the site for an entire month. Gold Rush, one word, get you ownership, player projections, top stack tool, boom or bust tool, all of our tools for every sport, not just basketball. This is complete full sport package for the month. It's $100 value, knocking 25% off that right out of the gate. If you go to awesemo.com/promos and use the Gold Rush promo right there. Like I said, all the tools built by the #1 ranked DFS player in the world, Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. You've seen the Hall of Fame. You've seen the Awesemo avatars up there left and right using these tools. Why not check it out? And if you're not in the position right now to say, all right, I don't have it right now to go for the full month, to do the 75% off that, got something else for you. We're doing another promo in honor of these huge showdown contests that you're going to be seeing in the NBA space throughout the postseason. And that is Play-In, PLAY-IN. I know we had to put the dash in there, the hyphen. I get it. But if you go to awesemo.com/promos, you can just click on it. What that is our Express Pass. Has a bunch of other stuff included, but all of the tools for showdown slates is included in our Express Pass. You'll get the Express Pass for $4.95 for the first week and then completely free for the second week. So 2 weeks for $4.95 total. If you use the promo code PLAYIN, PLAY-IN, or just go to awesemo.com/promos. So something for everyone. Check it out. Huge showdown contest. $300,000, easy for me to say, tonight would just be one example of that. All of our showdown content included in our NBA Express Pass. So check it out. Head over there and be sure to join our premium Slack chat when you do and ask questions to some of the pros in the office hours and join the community. All right, Washington and Boston. Let's make this happen. The Washington Wizards heading into Boston, Adam. 2-point dogs, 232.5 total. We got to start with Russell Westbrook here. He's minus 305, the triple-double. He's got a point rebound, I know, in the playoffs. He's got a point rebound and assist prop soaring above 50, 52.5 last time I looked. I mean, through and through, everything about this guy is going to be fantastic. The question is, not can you play him, but what will your lineups look like if you're playing Russell Westbrook tonight?
Ugly. I mean, it's tough, and it's not to say, like I saw during the tip-off show, like the conversation in chat about, fade or don't fade Westbrook. It's not like that because of the pricing today. Like, like you were saying earlier, on a lot of the slates, every slate over the last month, you can look at the top priced guys and just know that if you want them, you can get to them. It's not that simple of a conversation today because you really are giving stuff up. One, because there's just not a lot of good cheap value, but two, you have Tatum playing without Jaylen Brown against the Wizards. You have Domantas Sabonis playing with potentially a limited Brogdon and without LeVert, and then you have Westbrook at full strength, with Beal active, and a lot more expensive. So it's not. If Westbrook goes and gets 65 points, of course, that's fine. But there's a pretty good chance at least one of Tatum or Sabonis are in that range as well. And, good luck getting both of those guys into your lineup. So, Westbrook and one of those guys, I mean. So there is a really, really high opportunity cost, I think, to getting to Westbrook today. And then the other issue is when you think about the ownership of your entire lineup, even though Westbrook isn't likely to be as popular as Sabonis and Tatum, the problem you're going to run into potentially is the lineups that have Westbrook are going to have very, very similar builds because you're paying that premium, and it's going to force you onto a little bit more value. There's only so many competent value plays today. You're just going to end up with a lot of overlap with the other Westbrook lineup. So I think there's some legitimate reasons why this is the most difficult spot to roster Westbrook that we've had in months. But, all that said, if you get a lineup that is somehow contrarian somewhere else, and I will talk about one thing from the Wizards later that maybe you could use, by all means, Westbrook is still a good play. It's just, I have a lot harder time saying just put Westbrook in your lineup and figure out the rest today than I have in months.
Couple questions in super chats here, then we'll dive into the Wizards. Manny C says, is Fantasy Cruncher of any value in the postseason given the short slates? Yeah, absolutely. And there's a showdown version of Fantasy Cruncher as well. With the super chat, we had Benjamin says, great show as always, fellas. Best duo in the industry. Thanks, brother. And then Curiosity Seeker Adam asks, McBuckets, Gabbert, I'm assuming he means Gafford, Bertans, or Neesmith. Anybody here that's viable to you?
What was it? McDermott, Gafford, Naismith, and
Bertans.
All of them except for Naismith.
Okay, there you go. Thank you for the super chat. So we'll dig into Washington a little bit further here, and we'll start with Bradley Beal. You're getting him at a huge discount from somebody like Russell Westbrook, but you're also giving all of his potential peripherals straight over to Russell Westbrook. So you're going to need some points from him today. Beal's $10,000 on FanDuel, but over on DraftKings, he's $9,000, $2,400 less than $3,400, less than Russell Westbrook. How do we approach Bradley Beal today at this salary when he's in the same neighborhood as Tatum? Close enough, right? To Sabonis, closer than he is to Westbrook, put it that way.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised how much ownership we have him projected for right now. I mentioned him in the deep dive article today, thinking that he would be relatively low owned because he doesn't really stand out. But right now we have him getting 32% ownership, which to me, when you compare that to only 44 going to Sabonis, only 35 going to Tatum, I would rather just play those guys. Maybe, we get an ownership update closer to lock that knocks Beal down a bit, in which case he would start to be interesting. But the problem is what you said. He's extremely scoring dependent. He's averaged 1.18 DraftKings points per minute since the All-Star break in 28 games with Westbrook active. He's got a 32% usage rate. The problem is just he doesn't get assists, he doesn't rebound. So you need him to go out there and really, score a lot of points, which he certainly can. The other issue though is he's not 100%. I mean, he scored 25 points against Charlotte, but if you watch that game, he was very clearly still limited by his hamstring. He said as much after the game that, he just has to play through it. He's not 100%. He said he didn't make it any worse, which is good to hear. But we still, it's hard to say exactly how much you should, downgrade him or factor that in, but we know he's not 100%. And we're talking about somebody that has to go out there and score 40 real points to be someone you want to roster at 9K. So that's the type of guy where, if you were getting 15, 20% ownership tonight, I would have some interest there because then you're just getting, the second leading scorer in the NBA at low ownership on a 2-game slate. But if he's going to be in 30% of lineups and Tatum and Sabonis are only going to be in 35 or 40, I would rather just be getting more of those guys.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Suave asked on FanDuel, do you like Tatum or Sabonis, or would you play both?
I like them both a lot. I don't really have a strong preference between them. And if you happen to get both in a lineup, I don't know how easy that'll be, but obviously that's very good.
All right. And Manny C, if you do that, I want side-by-side pictures on Twitter as proof, because that would be incredible. All right. So what Russell Westbrook and Beal, with them out of the way, let's spend some time on guys like Rui and Bertans, who, look, nobody enjoys playing Davis Bertans, but it gets to a point where your alternatives are not any better than that whatsoever. And that's why Bertans is projected to be owned by a quarter of the field today. Rui's up there as well. There are a few guys, Robin Lopez, even drawing a little bit of intrigue here, just given the fact that this rotation could go one of many ways and he's dirt cheap. So what are we doing with the rest of this Washington team? A team that normally we wouldn't even be touching on outside of a, quick, well, maybe you get a little Bertans or a little Rui.
Yeah, so I'll start with the center rotation. I'm really disappointed seeing our ownership projections on those guys because I thought that was one spot that would actually be kind of interesting tonight because, and this is DraftKings specifically. On FanDuel, there are prices that you can't really get to. But on DraftKings, you have Len at 3,200, Lopez at 3,100, Gafford at 3,700. And if you just think about it in terms of like medium projections, none of them really look that good because Lopez averages about 17 minutes per game over their last 10. Gafford's at just shy of 18, and Len is at like 14. But the thing is that we know Scott Brooks most games runs 48 minutes for that trio, and to some extent it's a hot hand situation. So what you get is a lot of volatility in the playing time. Like last game Alex Len played one stint, but you only have to go back like 3 games to see Alex Len close and play 20 something minutes. Robin Lopez played like 27 minutes last game. Gafford is easily the best per minute fantasy producer. So it's kind of a situation where even though none of them look very good from an average standpoint, there's a decent chance that one of them on DraftKings pretty easily outperforms their salary. The problem is that you're just getting a nice amount of ownership for all these guys. I do think 3,700 for Daniel Gafford looks pretty good though. He's averaged just shy of 1.3 DraftKings points per minute with the Wizards. We haven't really seen him get the big, 24, 25-minute games that we would really like him to get. But he's also pretty consistently been playing mid-teens at least, which at 3,700, he still in that amount of time can give you 20-plus fantasy points, which is pretty useful on the slate. So I don't mind taking some shots on him. Lopez would be the second guy, and then Len would be third, but I have the least amount of confidence in him. Bertans, Rui, you mentioned Bertans being someone that isn't fun to trust at all. The thing or the argument that I would make for him here is like you look at Justin Holiday on DraftKings getting 31% ownership, Bertans getting 25 at about the same price point. Neither one is going to be fun to roster, but you can't tell me that you feel any better about Justin Holiday than you do about Davis Bertans. Rui at 5K, I think, only 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute with Westbrook and Beal since the All-Star break. The production's been pretty disappointing, but he is at least capable of going out there and scoring and putting up a big game. Like if the Celtics, really focus on shutting down Beal, shutting down Westbrook, Rui's going to be the guy that has to step up, either him or Bertans, to score some baskets here. So I can see getting him at pretty low ownership in tournaments, but again, you're just not going to feel that confident in it.
Yeah, Corey says Bertans questionable tonight in parentheses sunburn. And I did actually go back up and look up Dr. Jimmy. I saw you made that joke first. I just saw that now. So don't worry. It wasn't stolen entirely from you. Jordan, is this the same Igor in chat? It is? Okay. Yeah. Igor said, I don't know why, but my dad and his friends all day long talking about Jabari Parker. Thoughts, Adam?
I have him at 0 minutes.
Were you not here for Igor last time?
I guess not.
Maybe that was the strategy show. All right. Any other thoughts on the Wizards before we talk Boston and turn this one over to live before lock?
No, I think that's all my thoughts. I'll mention Ish Smith because he's projected for 15% ownership. He played 32 minutes last game. Just a reminder, Howell Neto was out. Neto, I'm assuming, is going to start and play upper 20s in minutes, which is probably going to push Ish Smith back to like 22 minutes. So not really a spot that I would be looking to get to all that aggressively.
Okay. Today's show is sponsored by Jock. That's not true. Today's show is sponsored by No House Advantage. Just seeing if you guys were all paying attention. Are you? No House Advantage, peer-to-peer player prop betting system, format, tournament style, pretty cool stuff over there if you haven't checked it out. What I mean by that, it's a guaranteed tournament, guaranteed prize pool tournament, GPP, over there where you're taking player props, right? Not like singles where you would do at any other book. You're taking player props, putting them into a contest form where the ones that you have the most confidence in go at the top, get the most points. The ones at the bottom are the ones that you have least confidence in. They get the fewest points, and you're playing against everybody else, just as you would do on any site, but you're building a lineup based on props. It's really cool. If that's not convincing enough, then, well, winning money and having free tools in order to do that should be convincing to you. At awesemo.com, we created tools specifically for No House Advantage, and they're entirely free. every single day of the week. So if you want to check out the No House Advantage player prop tool, the optimal lineups tool, all of that under the NBA drop down or any of the drop downs are totally free every day of the week for No House Advantage. And when you sign up and use the promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, well, you get $20 when you sign up and deposit for the first time. So check it out. Great place to build your bankroll. These sites want you to win money. Try and get a foothold in the industry, make things happen, and put their name in this industry somewhere. But yeah, it's all the tools are totally free over at awesemo.com, and you get $20 when you sign up using Awesemo. What more do I need to say? Check it out. Peer-to-peer player props over at No House Advantage. Check it out today. All right, Adam, the Boston Celtics, Jason Tatum, Kemba Walker, two guys we're going to touch on, but we got to start with Evan Fournier because Fournier's ownership is, I think, justifiably high today, given his 6K price point on DraftKings. Like, it's hard not to like him right now.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, I expect him to play 36 or so minutes tonight. We've seen him really pick things up. He started out terribly with Boston, but we have a reason for it too. He said he was playing through headaches. He had blurred vision, things that, probably make it pretty hard to shoot a basketball. He's been a lot better lately. And, of course, some of that is because Kemba missed time, Smart missed time. But overall this season, he's averaged just shy of a fantasy point per minute without Jaylen Brown on the floor. He's averaged, a fantasy point per minute if you include his time with Orlando. And he's at a price point where if he plays around 36 minutes in a good matchup against Washington, he's just going to stand out as a good option here. He doesn't need to go be the leading scorer on the team. He just needs to, play reasonably well, play to his, average performance, and he'll be fine here against Washington. So I think he deserves that ownership. Especially on DraftKings at 6K, a very favorable price tag, a little bit more difficult at, I think, 7,100 on FanDuel. Still fine, but certainly more favorably priced on DraftKings.
I think so too. And it's just, he's going to be a tough player to get away from at this point. He's played especially well recently. His permanent production over since the start of May, where he's actually began playing consistently more minutes and played a whole lot better, has been solid. Like, I think it's like 1.14. My only concern is that when you look at how he's produced that, in many cases, the peripherals haven't been terrible, but he's just shot really efficiently. Outside of, a handful of games here and there, he's shot really, really well. Can Evan Fournier give us what we need if he's not shooting 65% from the field?
So that's kind of the thing, is like, I think he plays enough minutes in this matchup that not to say that his floor is high, because, he is pretty scoring dependent, especially when you bring Kemba back and you're taking some assists away. But I think if he shoots 65%, he probably is scoring like 40 plus fantasy points, and he's going to be someone that, like, you have to have. If he shoots like, 45, 50%, he's probably, as long as he plays 36 minutes or so against the Wizards, he's probably still giving you a good enough score at 6K.
Okay. 2,000, almost 2,100 people watching, 260 likes. Oh, that's not going to cut it. Show us some love here. Hit that thumbs up if you just popped in and haven't done so yet, and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a ton. Really does. I do, for what it's worth, Adam. I like the over on Evan Fournier points today. So does our free player prop tool. We have Evan Fournier at 20.5 points per projected points. His prop is 17.5, and it's not juiced to the over at all, minus 108. That's a real nice spot there. I still think the minutes, the absence of Jaylen Brown, and the matchup against Washington all are enough for me to say this is a great spot for Evan Fournier, and I'm willing to hit the over on that for sure. But we haven't really talked about this. The matchup, we can't go overlooked. They're facing Washington. It's been a team that you and I have, every single show we've done this season, wanted to get to, their opponent, and Washington in many cases when it comes to Westbrook or Beal. But this is not like Boston's going up against Utah or the Knicks or the 76ers. They're going up against Washington, and that is why we'll spend a lot of time on this team, because it's the best matchup, or one of the best matchups in basketball.
Yeah, Washington for a little bit, when you look month by month, was passed by Indiana in terms of pace, but Washington's back to being the fastest team in the league. And they have played better defensively lately, but the extra possessions just are really, really important. And so, I think, again, that's another reason to like Fournier. My point projection's a little bit lower at 18.2, but still agree with you on the over there.
All right. Well, Jason Tatum, $9,800 over on DraftKings. On FanDuel, Jason Tatum is $10,000. You're not paying an insane price point for him with Jaylen Brown out, but Kemba's healthy in this one. What are we doing with Jason Tatum today?
Playing him. Like he's getting a lot of ownership and deservedly so, but you're probably getting 40-ish, maybe more minutes from Tatum here. He's averaged 1.32 DraftKings points per minute in 10 games with Kemba active and with Brown inactive this season. Overall, without Jaylen Brown on the floor, he's averaged 1.38 DraftKings points per minute, 34% usage rate. And then you have to keep in mind when you talk about per minute production, that's not factoring in, Washington and the fact that he's going to have more possessions on average than against any other team in the league. So Tatum, I think, looks great. Washington, I think, probably doesn't really have an answer for him here. We've seen Bradley Beal try and defend him before. That didn't really go very well. So it's just, another really good spot for Tatum. I feel similarly about him as I do Sabonis. A slight edge for Sabonis, I think. But Tatum looks great.
Everyone that was questionable is in for the Pacers.
Yeah, that's going to be a mess. But yeah, it kind of, so to, I guess, just quickly go back to that, guys like Sumner and Justin Holiday are still going to project as pretty good point per dollar plays given their salaries and the lack of alternatives. But everyone being in does make them a lot riskier, and you should be a little bit more willing to be different in large field tournaments because the floor just is a little bit lower when you could potentially have Aaron Holiday take minutes from Edmund Sumner. You could potentially have Aaron Holiday take minutes from Justin Holiday. You could, have those guys just suck because they suck. So there's, a lot of ways that it can go poorly. Whereas if like Holiday and Sumner had been out, there's not really that many ways that like McDermott and Holiday don't play their minutes.
A question I haven't asked you yet, but I think it's relevant and one that, with a 2-game slate, you don't see this very often. And oftentimes the answer is it doesn't really matter, right? But with a team like Boston that has a ton of popular players right now, 3 of them above 40% projected on DraftKings, 4 at 35+%, even though it's a 2-game slate, they're going to be very popular given the matchup, given Brown's absence, and given some price points that, in my opinion, on DraftKings are just too low. How many are you willing to have in the same lineup tonight?
Probably 3. If there was one guy that I could see going 4 if you include one of the centers. Like, I doubt it's really that easy to get Tatum, Walker, Fournier, Smart. And they kind of have enough overlap where one of them probably doesn't have a very good game if the other 3 do really well. But, like, I could see going 4 if you're taking, Thompson or Robert Williams. The thinking kind of just being like Fournier, Walker, Tatum handle the scoring. Thompson gets, 12 rebounds or something. At 4,800, he'll be fine too. So I could see going 4.
One more thing that I'll throw at you, I think it's kind of important, is how do you look at playoff rotations and make adjustments? Because one of the reasons value just is non-existent in the postseason is because of someone like Brad Stevens could give all 4 of those aforementioned starters that Smart, Tatum, Walker, and Fournier, he could give them all 40 minutes tonight, and it just trashes value elsewhere in terms of bench players. But does it make it easier to say, all right, well, if I could fit 4 of them, it might not be the craziest idea because they're facing Washington and they're going to be out there for the entire damn game.
Yeah. And I think that's, another good point, another good way of looking at it. A lot of guys that, like, during the regular season, you would say, okay, I think he plays like 33 minutes. Maybe he'll play 35 or 36. You're looking at those guys now saying, okay, I think he plays 36. Maybe he plays 40. The rotations are just going to be tighter. Like, you could conceivably just have like Grant Williams not play for Boston, for example, just thinking of someone, or Nesmith or Pritchard. Like, I don't think it'll be Pritchard, but like you could just have one of those guys kicked out of the rotation entirely and end up getting, 42 minutes from Tatum, 40 from Walker, 40 from Fournier, 40 from Smart. So yeah, you just get tighter rotations.
Yeah, I think that'll be the case today. At least 40, 38 to 40. They were playing 38 in regulation and close regular season games.
Right.
What's a couple extra minutes to make sure that they're, positioned nicely, if that even matters, heading into this, the postseason. Break down the rest of the Celtics for me. We got a few minutes to go here.
Yeah, so the one spot we don't really know yet is who's going to start at center because Robert Williams hasn't played since May 9th. He started that game. Thompson came off the bench, but then, of course, he's been out. So we don't know if Thompson's going to start or Williams is going to start. I don't think it makes a huge difference. Obviously it makes – I feel better about whoever's starting than I would if they were coming off the bench. But In his starts in 6 games, Robert Williams has started with Thompson active this year. He's averaged about 25 minutes per game. Thompson, if Thompson starts, I think you probably get like 28 minutes for Thompson, 20 for Williams. If Williams starts, you're probably getting like a 24-24 split or something. So it matters. Like Williams does look better, I think, if he starts. But at the same time, if he comes off the bench, his ownership's going to go down, and he's certainly somebody you can use as a tournament pivot. I mean, he's $500 more expensive than Cody Zeller. Cody Zeller most likely is coming off the bench as well. And Williams is the better fantasy producer. So, I don't think that the ceiling is really any lower for Williams than it is for Zeller, and the ownership probably will be. Same can be said for Thompson, who, is still between a 0.9 and 1 fantasy point per minute guy in a good matchup against Washington. So that's one lineup spot they'll have to pay attention to. But I do think going to the Boston centers here is, a pretty good strategy, because you're getting a lot of ownership going to the other pieces of Boston, but then you're getting more ownership going to, Cody Zeller, who's basically the same price as Williams and Thompson. Zeller getting 35% ownership on DraftKings compared to 22 for Thompson and 18 for Williams. I think Zeller's the guy I play in cash, but I really don't think the gap should be that big in tournaments.
Me neither. Who are your favorite options from Boston today? I'm asking you to put them in order just because there's so many of them that are viable.
Yeah, so didn't really touch on him specifically, but Kemba is actually my favorite guy when you consider the price.
I love
DraftKings.
Kemba at that price point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's 7,300. He sat out the last few games, but I don't expect him to be limited here unless we hear otherwise. In the last 2 games he played 40 and 38 minutes. We had seen him, towards the end of the season, really get away from that 32 to 33 minute spot where he had been stuck and start playing a lot of minutes. He's averaged 1.2 DraftKings points per minute without Brown on the floor this year. He's got a 30% usage rate in the games that Tatum has played and Brown has not. The matchup is great. I think Kemba looks like the top guy to me from Boston, all things considered. Then I would say Tatum, Smart, Fournier in that order, but not really a big gap between them when you consider salary. And then 5th would be whoever the starting center is. 6th would be whoever the backup center is. There is no 7th.
I'll tell you what, it is tough to make lineups tonight, even if you don't have Westbrook.
Yeah, it really is. Like I keep, for the most part, I've gotten away from, playing large field tournaments, but I keep considering registering tonight just because it's hard and it's going to be a messy slate where, if you're willing to take on risk, you actually can have a pretty decent advantage, I think. Whereas in a lot of NBA slates recently, it's kind of been like, yeah, you can take on risk, but you're just like choosing not to play guys that are never going to fail.
It's crazy. Well, we'll see what happens. Who's your favorite top tier option and your favorite value for this slate as we shut the door on this one and open it up to live before lock coming up right now with Spags and Eric?
Yeah, my favorite top tier guy, I would say Sabonis, but again, I don't think it's a huge gap between him and Tatum. Westbrook is obviously the top projected guy, but that salary is pretty tough to get to. As far as value goes, man, there's value that looks fine, but you can make a very strong case against literally every player under 5K today. I guess I would say Zeller because he's someone that I'm confident is going to be in my cash lineup. But I think in tournaments I like going to either a Boston center or a Washington center, and just kind of hoping you run good on the minutes there.
All right, Spags, Eric coming up next. Excuse me. Don't forget, Gold Rush gets you 25% off everything for the entire month. If you go to awesemo.com/promos and play-in, PLAY-IN, gets you the Express Weekly for NBA, which is usually $4.95. Get you two full weeks for $4.95. All of our Showdown content, all of our Showdown tools, everything you got for Showdown, and a bunch of other tools included. Check it out, awesemo.com/promos. And if you're not ready yet, well, check out all of our free content on the site today, which is usually behind the paywall. The NBA Big Board, MLB ownership rankings, PGA ownership projections, and the NHL player and stack rankings. That'll do it for us. Thanks for watching. As always, guys, good luck tonight. Adam and I will be back with you tomorrow. Running it back here on the Deeper Dive, presented by No House Advantage.
What is up, guys? You are in the home stretch for today's NBA playoff slate, where we are going to take you through the finer things here over the next 40 minutes before the early lock time today for our 2 play-in games. And I am Chris Spags, joined by a man who, as you know, watching these shows, I cherish more than anybody out there. He's Eric Lindquist. How are you doing, Eric?
Cherish more than anyone out there. Can I put that on my resume? Chris Spags. She just absolutely loves me going forward with my life. I'm cool with that. I love chat. How are we doing chat? Everybody looks relaxed and chill today. These are good things. Had fun on the tip off. No guitar today. That was sad. No Awesome Hotels the Future. I guess I did sing a little bit of it, but not a song. Not a day really goes by where I'm not singing something at this point.
That is what you are known for. And what we are known for here at Awesemo is offer you guys fantastic ways to enhance your DFS playing as well as your prop betting out there. And one of the ways that you can do that, you just heard Lofty talk about it a little bit, but I'm going to get my promo out of the way early too. Gold Rush is the promo code you guys be getting in on right now, because it is a gold rush in the DFS industry right now, where we have sports, so many sports going on. The NBA playoffs obviously going on. That's what you're watching right now. MLB is going on, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, all this NHL playoffs also going. So there's tons of ways here you can win money playing DFS. And if you use that promo code GOLDRUSH at awesemo.com/join, you'll get yourself 25% off your first month of all the Awesemo Plus data. That's player projections, ownership projections, of lineup builder, the premium Slack, and also a lot of the per sport tools like the top stacks tool, top pitchers tool for MLB, the boom bust tool for NBA. There's lots of those for every sport. So go use that promo code GOLDRUSH at awesemo.com/join. If you are a person who doesn't like to spend that much money on your DFS product, maybe just playing some casual lineups, including the showdowns for the playoffs, go use the promo code PLAY-IN. That is play-in at awesemo.com/join, because you can get 2 weeks of our NBA Express package for the price of 1 week. That is just $4.95 for 2 weeks of all the games that are going on right now in the showdown world. You also get the premium Slack access to that as well, but really, the showdowns are going to be the main thing for the playoffs. Obviously, the NBA is going to be a weird schedule for parts of this, but there are still going to be big showdown contests everywhere, including tonight in the DFS industry. So go use that promo code PLAY-IN at awesemo.com/join. That is less than $5 to get all that showdown content for yourself. So go take part in that right now. And I guess one more plug here for No House Advantage. Why not? Let's get them all out of the way so we can really dig deep on all of the games that we have. No House Advantage is the presenting sponsor of this show, and you know what they're doing for you guys out there, giving a different spin on daily fantasy sports using the world of prop betting, where they're giving a peer-to-peer prop betting experience, much like a DFS tournament. Just rank your plays from your confidence levels. 10 points for your most confident pick, 1 point for your less confident pick, but lots of ways for you guys to make money over at No House Advantage, including our promo code Awesemo, where they'll deposit match you up to $20 right away. So go beat your friends, not the house, download in the App Store, and win big with player props today at nohouseadvantage.com or downloading No House Advantage in the App Store. All right, whew, we got that done now. So now we
How was that for you? Kayla read that earlier today too, and it was just like, whew, we made it. We made it.
I guess I thought Jordan slacked because we had a super chat. In fact, he's just slacking one of our brand new faces here in the YouTube chat, who's getting a lot of attention today because apparently we just cannot help ourselves when people do shtick in the YouTube chat. And Igor here says, Eriksson Lindquist, you a Scandinavian man. I didn't mean to read that in an accent that could be perceived as inappropriate for Scandinavian people. But Eric, it seems like Igor, very proud of you as a fellow Scandinavian.
Half off swimming suits, yeah. Big summer blowout. Isn't that from Frozen? Yeah, it's totally from Frozen. I have nieces and nephews. It's fine.
Yeah, that's congratulations to all the Scandinavians.
Thank you so much.
I'm sure a joyous time in Scandinavian culture. People ask about MLB. We did MLB earlier. The deeper dive was the show of the day, but there will be a moving schedule with some of the MLB deeper dives, NBA deeper dives, and NBA Live Before Locks. So keep that in mind here, but subscribe to the channel so you'll know whenever we have content going up, because it is going to be a moving feast of a schedule with the MLB and NBA playoffs coming up. But let's talk about this slate, Eric. We've gotten all the plugs out of the way. We've got a lot of plays that people are going to be curious about. And I feel like the question I'm going to ask you, based on what you were talking about with Greg and Kayla on the tip off earlier, is going to be the Russell Westbrook question of the day, where over the last few weeks, we have just been slamming this guy in the lineups. And today, because of the pricing on both sites being sort of reflected to be a bit less soft, I'm kind of surprised by that, but it is a lot less soft pricing on DraftKings in particular, on FanDuel as well, though. And Westbrook going to be projected for sub 30% ownership for the first time in a while. I'm not sure if that number is going to hold, Eric, but how are you handling him today? Because I got to 40% of him, and even that was kind of a struggle given some of the other studs we have on the slate.
It's a stretch, but that's a stretch I'm kind of willing to make. And I think that Hearing the guys talk ahead of time over on the deeper dive, like I think Adam's point about Tatum and Sabonis is very valid, but they're coming in with more ownership than Westbrook, and that's kind of what I'm looking at. And I feel like if you're going to tell me a guy's going to go out and put 70 plus, who are you going to pick? I'm going to pick Russ Westbrook. And so I guess I am paying that little extra, well, I mean, a lot extra on both sites to be able to try to make that happen. But I think looking at this entire slate from a macro level, there's a couple things. One, there's so much that people are assuming that they know that they just don't know about this slate. I don't know what the minutes are going to look like for Indiana. I have no idea what the center rotation is going to look like for Washington. So instead of trying to like break down exactly what that is supposed to be, I think the right approach is to be able to embrace some of that risk, say that there are a lot more unknowns. And so it's not necessarily I'm so for Russ Westbrook. It's more that I'm against some of the chalkier value. I think that there are holes to poke in. You know, Adam also said he was kind of like basically making the argument against having more Sabonis and Tatum by saying that there are so many guys under 5K that we just don't know what those minutes are going to look like. What's the capacity that Malcolm Brogdon's going to have on the slate? What's O'Shea Brissett's minutes going to be like? Keelan Martin's been a part of that rotation. Is he just going to be completely out of it now? Aaron Holiday coming into the mix. There's so many question marks that I have. So instead of trying to just break down like what I think is going to happen, how about like poking holes in like some of the value that people are just assuming that XYZ is going to happen? I think that that's the right approach for this 2-gamer. And that's kind of the way that I'm building lineups.
So I guess that would lend itself to another question that's related to that, where Edmund Sumner is a guy that I think is very hard to move away from the boom bust tool. Also does have him being in the optimal about half the time. And he's a player that, to me, you know, during the course of the year, we've seen him be a play as a chalk play, an NBA DFS regular season slates that has not panned out, though he has had times too where he has, you know, had a pretty good fantasy point per minute production and gotten the minutes too. He also has been not playing the last few games because of a bruised knee. And we have seen guys come back from that injury and play their full allotment of run, though playoffs are going to be, as Eric mentioned, anyone's guess is good at anything. But with Sumner today, is he a guy that you're viewing as being worth getting under the field on? Because we have him projected for 33% ownership right now. I think you can make the case here, but the boom bust tool, putting him a lot in that optimal, gave me a little more hope, I guess, that he could just be one of the very few usable value guys on the slate.
He is my highest owned player on this slate. So you hit it, you hit the nail on the head. And I think that this is kind of what I'm speaking to, is that he's already getting ownership, and I get that. But if you told me that you knew you were going to get 22 minutes out of Edmund Sumner, and like 22 minutes, I would actually be pretty okay with at 3,400 on this slate where we have no value. That gives me the opportunity that if Russ Westbrook's going to put up the 70 plus that I'm going to need probably to be successful, because I'm going to take more. I'm not going to be like completely underweight to Sabonis and Tatum. I think there's still a path where you can be at about the field. Like I'll be a little bit under. I'll say that, but I think that there's still a path to be building that way. But I'm just kind of embracing the volatility of what this lineup, like what it's going to look like. Aaron Holiday did come in and play all right there in stints of late. But you basically, like, you're taking LeVert off the floor. This is kind of a whole different unknown. It's not the Brogdon situation we've been having. They're going to need to have some of those bigger lineups to try to put out. I mean, Sabonis is a 5. Like Goga is a guy that I don't really know what those minutes are going to be. I can't think that it's going to be anything meaningful for me to get them, like to get to him. But there's a path where Sumner can play a number of different positions and kind of fits in a little bit more. Like I really like going to a 3,400 number of him. I'm willing to embrace that being like the guy that I really need to have go off in this spot, and you know, make your mistakes cheap. And that's part of this slate as well. Like everybody else that you're taking shots on is going to be a little bit more expensive. There's no 3K guys that I'm like, I need to get to him as my difference maker on this slate. The only way that would work out optimally is if you would like found a path to jam in all like 3 studs and tried to like build that way and hope that they all go for 65 plus. But today I'm going Westbrook. I'm going very heavy on Kemba, and I'm kind of figuring out where else to go.
So I guess that's the one thing that might differ in our approaches today. We're part of my logic in getting less Westbrook, though. I will still be above the field, and I hadn't capped at 40%. And that was when I noticed the lineup started to degrade more, is when I tried to push him at 50%. I'm getting less Sabonis, getting less Tatum. And I think we should talk a little bit, and maybe you might view it differently, but part of the reason why I think you have to get less than Westbrook is, besides what Eric is talking about with a lot of the specious value out there, as you heard the deeper dive guys talk about previously, rotations get short, and that is a big part of playoffs that you need to know. And it gets even worse when it gets to the finals, to conference finals, finals, all of that. But in the play-in games too, this is basically an elimination game, though, not quite. Obviously, that's it's a little bit different with how that works. But for the most part, they're going to treat it like it's an elimination game for both sides today, or both games today. And I do think that does mean an increased starter run. And really, that's been one of the things that Westbrook has had on some of these guys all year. Obviously, he's been great per minute production, also been getting the triple doubles and all that. He's also been playing 38 to 40 minutes per game. Today, you're probably going to be seeing Tatum around that mark. You're going to see Sabonis around that mark. And granted, we have seen some of that before. It wouldn't be shocking to see Kemba Walker get close to there. Marcus Smart, another guy, should get that high allotment of minutes. And I think to me, that's part of how I'm viewing it, Eric. And feel free to tell me if you're viewing it differently. But I think that's why you can move away from Westbrook. For anybody out there who's just baffled why you wouldn't play 100% Westbrook or even 100% Tatum or 100% Sabonis, it's because all these guys are sort of going to be on more even footing today in terms of just, being out there for a crazy run of court time.
No, you're 100% dead right. This is not, we don't have 10 teams that are playing shorthanded or tanking and that we have all this unlimited value. We absolutely do not have that, but that makes me want to play Westbrook a little bit more. And some people might say, oh, well, the public's still going to get to Westbrook. It's the name recognition and he's been playing so good and he's going to end up higher owned. No, he's not, because it is very difficult to build lineups with him. And, I think also you're going to look at some of the same value plays. Like, I don't think Sumner's going under owned by any means. I mean, he's 33%, but what I'm doing is I'm just taking a stronger overweight approach. I'm finding a couple guys here and there in that second game and trying to find paths to get a little bit different. I mean, I'm higher on Daniel Gafford than I ever thought I would be in a million years. I'm taking some shots on, up and down this entire Pacers lineup, but I'm just really embracing the fact that there are certain guys that I think the public has a really good feel for that they really don't. I think you have to be able to embrace that risk. And, for a guy like Cody Zeller to just kind of be the de facto guy, I just think there's so many paths where that can go very, very poorly come playoff time. And I don't know, 30+% of him. I think that there's a path where we can be a little bit lighter on him. Not saying that he's a bad play by any means. And on FanDuel, you're punting that position by default. I talked a little bit about that earlier. And I think there are paths to get to two of the three of Westbrook, Jason Tatum, and Domantas Sabonis. Not too difficult on FanDuel, more so than what it probably would appear to be on other slates, because there are no spend ups at the small forward or the center position. So I'm kind of building my lineups that way. And I'm happy to live with the result of being, double the field on Russell Westbrook.
So you mentioned Cody Zeller there, and we're going to jump around a lot here. We're going to talk obviously about pretty much every play on the slate, because that's what we have to do here to fill the next 30 minutes. And hit that like button if you can, guys. We appreciate that a bunch. Looks like we have about 2,300 people in the room right now, only 440 likes. So I feel like get that to a respectable 750 or so would be a nice benchmark to hit. And we will do our own version of Money Time here coming up, let's say in 13 minutes. I'll give you guys the top 5 owned plays on DraftKings and FanDuel today for free. So make sure to hit that like button now. Let's see, people. So here's one thing in the YouTube chat, and I'm going to encourage this right now, and I'm not going to be too hardline on it, but don't be dicks throughout the playoffs. I think people really were dicks throughout the end of the season with talking smack about plays and whatever. And I think if you're talking smack about Edmund Sumner in the chat right now, you're kind of showing your own ignorance with DFS, where this is what you have to do to get to these spots today. And people are going to be talking about plays that are uncomfortable because that's what the pricing pushes forward. But try and act like you're above it. There was a guy in chat the other day who was was going obsessed with me talking about Luke Cornett. Luke Cornett ended up having the best value. He smashed.
And I love that he smashed for you.
Yeah, I think at this point, especially with the NBA, the playoffs is a little bit different because, as we talked about, it's more star-studded than the regular season. But if you're playing DFS regularly, you should know at this point that to start being shitty to people for talking about plays, whether it be us as hosts or your peers over in chat, that's just don't do it. I think would be the one thing I would say to push for. So that's
and go ahead and bash me. I know that Spags comes to my defense because he thinks that I'm somebody who's sensitive about things, and I am a sensitive person by nature. I am a good-hearted, lovely individual. But what I'm trying to do by doing these shows is I love to help people. I mean, I come from a coaching background, as an acting coach, is doing other things. I love to help people. I want you to get better. I'm not doing this for fun. I have money in play. I have my own goals. I have my own things that I want to accomplish in DFS, and I'm here to help you. And so going in chat and just bashing me, go ahead and do it. But I can guarantee you it's not going to make you any more money. And talking through a process and finding the reasons that you do disagree with me can be just as important as finding the commonality or why I'm coming onto certain plays or why certain guys are popping for me. finding those reasons that you do disagree can be just as important. So keep an open mind with things. I promise you that I'm giving you my best effort every single time that I get on the show. There's never been a show that I've ever done with Spags where he wasn't the most prepared person in the entire Zoom chat room, should you say. I don't know what the virtual world that we're in. So just be kind and understand that we are just giving you what our takes are. We are giving you exactly the data, the things that we learn here at Awesemo, the best tools in the industry. And we're pushing those forward in order for you to be successful, because there is some life-changing money that's available if you're willing to stop being just boneheaded and listen to what we say.
Yeah, I think thank you for saying that. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of it. We're just trying to be, honestly, just trying to be helpful to everybody out there. And I think, yeah, everybody in Chatsy, for the most part, 99% of you guys are doing the same, but I just want to make sure we're trying to cultivate that here moving forward, because the playoffs, especially, you're gonna have to have some hot takes, because especially when the pricing is like this, like you have to be difficult to do that. So that's the main thing I would say. And just keep that in mind with whatever you guys are looking at for your data.
That said,
today.
let's fucking go. How about that? Okay.
So we did just get the news, and I want to talk more about Cody Zeller, because I think, to me as a play, I feel some degree of confidence more in him. And Edmund Sumner does get a little bit less appealing right now, though. The minutes, I think, from Awesemo are going to be what I'm going to be looking forward to the most. But he's not starting now. We did get the starting lineup for the Pacers.
Yeah, I just saw that.
Brogdon, Justin Holiday, Doug McDermott, O'Shea Brissett, and Domantas Sabonis at center. So that's the grouping there. We've gotten the news previously that you guys heard about in the deeper dive. Brogdon expected to be playing in 5 to 6 minute bursts. Sabonis, no limitations on him. It seems like he should be mostly a full go. But let's talk about the starting lineup, because I agree that it does increase the risk of Sumner. I still think at the price tag, it's going to be tough to not get some. But I do think this makes Justin Holiday look better. Still a bit of a specious value, but one who should get more shots up with no Karis LeVert in the mix. I think, to me, just playing some amounts of Holiday and McDermott, probably close to equal, to me, seems like the best approach. And then cutting your Sumner exposure to be definitely not above the field's 33% be how I'm looking at it, Eric. But how are you viewing it now that we know that it is not Sumner starting? It is, in fact, Justin Holiday and Doug McDermott.
I think that ownership's going to plummet as a result. And again, we don't know how Sumner and Holiday are banged up, but I can guarantee you that they're not as banged up as somebody with a hamstring injury who hasn't played since April 29th in Malcolm Brogdon. So I think the big question mark, and the thing we have to embrace about this entire situation, is, what do Brogdon's minutes look like? How much time is Brogdon going to be on the floor, and what are the other minutes we have available? Because taking Karis LeVert off, you're taking 40 minutes off and you're putting 30 minutes on with Brogdon, is kind of the way that I look at that. So there is still some plus gains to be had from some of these pieces. And if that ownership is going to drop on a guy at 3,400 for Edmund Sumner, who I think still has to kind of be banked into playing 20 plus minutes. Again, I basically had him at 22 minutes all day, and I think that that's kind of where it's going to remain. I don't know if I was necessarily expecting him to start in this spot. So I still think there's some viability to go there. Maybe that ownership does drop here leading up to lock. And I think that's where, you're talking about the boom bust tool. That's one of the most important things we can have, because the news has changed drastically here in the last 5 minutes, and now getting a starting lineup and seeing that everybody's going to be active and who's not, and knowing that Brogdon's going to be playing in these 4 to 5 minute stints. So I'm just trying to embrace some of the risk. I don't know what the Brogdon minutes are necessarily going to look like. I think there's a large range of outcomes. There's a wide range of outcomes. He could play 20. He could play 36. I think he's more likely to play 20 than he is 36. So I think that makes me still getting to a little bit of Sumner. I still think that if I'm not trying to avoid some of the really hairy situation, I still think you have to embrace, if you're going to play Russ Westbrook, and I'm just trying to find paths to get different. And, anything that isn't Sabonis, Tatum, and the chalk pieces is going to be a little bit different. I like still going over top on Westbrook, even with that news. I think Sumner's still somebody that I'm not going to have as much exposure to, but I'm still going to be there. And then Ish Smith is a guy that maybe you want to take more shots on, because he's at that 3,900 number over on DK. I'm playing most of my stuff over there. I still got some in that $7.77 over on FanDuel, but I still think we got to find paths to be willing to accept that Sumner could also be a fail, but at least he's 3,400 as opposed to somebody like 4,600 or 4,200 in Bertans that could also be fails for a little bit more. And then that prevents you from getting to the super ceiling of Westbrook.
The minutes for Sumner coming down to from Awesmo's minutes projection was, I think, mid 26 to now 22.5. As a result, I think Holiday and McDermott to me look like the best value-ish. It sucks because if Holiday were 4,100, I would feel a lot better about saying, hey, just find a way to get to Holiday from Sumner. But I do think Holiday and McDermott clearly look like the best projected plays here. And man, in terms of value now, is there any play sub 4K that you actually feel like you're going to be getting more than a 30-year lineups with?
I'm still going to be over on Sumner. I have to. I think that's the only path to be able to, because now, like, if I'm thinking about this just from a game theory perspective, we've got 20 minutes to lock over on DraftKings. I'm going to talk mainly about DraftKings for this kind of scenario, because I don't think you have to be forcing it as much. I think FanDuel, because of the small forward position and the center position being kind of punts by default, I think I can still get to a little bit more Russ and not really have to like beat myself over the head to make it happen. On DraftKings, like, I still think 3,400, I'm just going to group it. I think you bring up a good point there where it's like, okay, Ish Smith is 3,900. You know, he's getting double-digit ownership, and the only reason for that is you need to find some kind of a piece that can kind of fill the need there. And he's over 20. He's going to project for over 20 minutes. He's going to be on the floor right at 20. So he's at 19 right now. And I think that there is that upside that can exist where, you know, he has played a little bit more coming down the stretch, back-to-back meaningful games, Cleveland and Charlotte, 24 and 32. Not saying he's going to go completely nuts in that time by any means, but like, he at least is a piece of value under 4K. Keelan Martin's kind of off the board for me. Gafford still there, but like Sumner, I'm expecting that ownership to come down now that he's not starting. So if I'm going to get him at 15, 20%, that's still a guy that I see playing over 20 minutes. And I saw somebody said like he's got a bum knee and coming in. Well, Brogdon has a bum hamstring. And so I don't know. It's embracing the fact that I don't know. So why don't I just go overweight on the cheaper guy?
So here's one piece of potential value that might have opened up here. The Hornets starting lineup is out. Ball, Rozier, Bridges, Washington, and Bismack Biyombo expected to make the start at 3,300 on DK. And I honestly, this is a surprise to me. And I know you were poking some holes in the Cody Zeller ownership earlier. I thought that he's been the guy that they've leaned on whenever the team has sort of needed to really steady up the shores for the most part. And I assumed in a play-in game, you'd want him in there, but it seems like they're going for a little more rim defense than Cody Zeller in his pick and roll game in particular. I'm surprised by it, but I do think Bismack Biyombo, if you're going to give him 20 minutes, he probably is now the only guy that I would consider to be heavily playable at under 4K on DraftKings. But how would you feel about him, I guess, in this situation?
I got to love it. I'm going to play a lot of it right now because we've got 19 minutes leading up to lock. I bet he still gets to around 20, 25% ownership. But if he was sitting at 3,300 the entire day and he was the guy who played 30 minutes back to back, no, I hate Bismack Biyombo. I've basically been underweight on him pretty much any situation where he is chalk, but it's hard for him to get to be chalk in this level in the next 19 minutes. Now, a lot of us here, a lot of you guys tuning in, you guys are playing DFS on the daily. There's a lot of recreational money that shows in for some of these play-in tournaments for these two gamers. They make the prize pools bigger on DraftKings because casual fans feel like they can win those a little bit more, I think. And I feel like this is now the spot where it's like he's in the starting lineup. Let's try jagging up a little bit of his exposure. I'm curious what those minutes are going to look like because he started against the Clippers, played 26 minutes, started against Denver, 16, 26. Like if I make his base number 21 minutes, I'm going to get to a crazy amount of him. I think playing him and God, maybe that's another piece that also takes some attention away from Sumner. And I do feel better about Sumner, but I already had my doubts about Cody Zeller. I've been talking about being light on him pretty much all day. It's not anything other than I was kind of finding a game theory angle, and to project him for big minutes felt like a fool's errand there. But I think our projections did a great job of being lighter on the Cody Zeller minutes all day. And PJ Washington didn't close the last game against Washington. And I think that he definitely, as a starter and as a guy going forward, is going to be somebody who closes out this one more than likely with the matchup. But Bismack Biyombo, I think you have to get to a little bit now at least. And I might get to a lot.
Yeah, let's we just got a projections update rather. So if you are like us here and like me, I'm gonna plug this in real fast and then we'll hit some super chats. But Bismack Biyombo, let's just see what the minutes are looking like for him from our Awesemo data team. Bismack Biyombo projected for 20.5 minutes, which knocks Cody Zeller down to 16 minutes. And I don't have any issue, I guess, with how that looks. It does feel like this might be more of a straight 48-minute split than I would think. But is 20 minutes of Bismack enough for you, Eric, or are you going to have more of a more aggressive minutes projection for him?
I don't know. I really don't know. And I don't think any of it like the narrative changes. This is a one game. You have to win it. Like this you're going to have to win back-to-back games to get into the playoffs, but this is a do or die game. And I think that brings a lot of question marks to my brain right now where it's like Biyombo hasn't even been a part of the rotation the last two games. And both of those games really did matter. So I'm very confused by like what the path is here. I think He's not a high usage guy. For a center, he is like one of the worst fantasy producers you can possibly get. Like right around 0.8 is abysmal for a guy who should supposedly be coming down with boards and be getting a lot to him. I'm just going to keep going so I can give you some time to make some adjustments in your lineups as well. I think that's the teamwork makes the dream work kind of situation. But Bismack Biyombo, not the greatest fantasy point producer, but if you give him like on a floor, if you make him 21 minutes, I end up with an ungodly amount of him. I'm not sure what you're getting to, but I don't know how much that ownership can really get up there in the next 16 minutes. So I'm happier to take a more overweight approach. He's a piece of value that I also think, Jalen McDaniels was somebody I was kind of considering having about the field at. I'm going to trim a little bit of him here too. 4,900, it's a 2-game slate. You can say that about every single player, period, that you only need to have it work out one time at the kind of ownership, but he's at least got double-digit ownership. If that's not going to change, I'm going to have 0. And I think the same conversation needs to be had for Cody Zeller over on FanDuel, where it's like, okay, he's your most owned center, basically. It's him and Tristan Thompson. I would be moving all of that to Tristan Thompson no matter what and living with the result, even leaving 600 on the table. I'm not sure if you need that money or not, but it really doesn't matter because I think the floor for Zeller now exists in a way that the ownership won't show.
Yeah, so I'm with you on all of what you're saying there. And I think Bismack Biyombo, I'm just going to point out, not a great projection. And this is something that actually I had to set. I never set a minimum projection amount on Fantasy Cruncher because normally it's not an issue. Today, I was getting guys like Chandler Hutchinson who projects for like 3 fantasy points. Some guys who project for like 5 fantasy points. So Bismack Biyombo projecting for a little bit over 15, actually a little bit over 16 for me, 16 flat for Osmo. Like, I think he's in the mix, especially because today is in a slate where, you could play Sabonis at power forward. You could play on DraftKings. You could play Tatum, obviously not at center. Like, there are no plays here. You're not missing out on Nikola Jokic. You're not missing out on Joel Embiid. So I think because of that, I think going heavy on Biyombo is probably the move, even though that is a terrible sentence to say out loud. And I apologize for anybody who follows.
Didn't it hurt? It didn't feel right. It's like going to bed without brushing your teeth and then waking up in the morning. It's just like, it wasn't a good idea. It wasn't good.
Biyombo, looks like the ownership is getting an update right now, so we'll have that for you guys, and I'll give you guys a little bit of a read on money time, and I'll run my final crunch. We got some super chats built up though, so let's just hit these real fast. There was one about FanDuel that unfortunately I missed, and I think Jordan didn't grab, but it was one about Brissett and Tristan Thompson was a grouping here, and I know we haven't talked much about FanDuel. I know you said you're playing more on DraftKings today, but in terms of value plays on FanDuel, just give me quick elevator thoughts on the top values on there, because I think Brissett's a guy that people have a lot of questions about.
Yeah, and they should have a lot of questions because I have absolutely no idea either. And I think that's kind of been the story of today, is that like we have to be able to embrace the volatility, or maybe just don't play the slate. Like there's really no other way around it. Hang on a sec. My FanDuel stuff just shut down on me for 1 sec. Oh, there it goes. Okay. And we're back. So looking up and down the board on FanDuel, I made 5 lineups over there, and then I'm going to make another 15 here now. Let's plug this together. Yeah. Russell Westbrook, he's an absolute reach at 13K, like an absolute reach. But I think for a lot of these next couple lineups, like, Biyombo isn't the best play whatsoever, but he's $600 below anybody else that I'd have interest in, Alex Len. So he gives me a path to be able to play a little bit more Westbrook. I think that's really kind of the guy that you have to be jamming a little bit leading up to lock. I doubt his ownership even gets to 10-15% over on FanDuel. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but with how large that tournament is and with how close this came out up to lock, I know it's only 2-game slate and there's not like a ton of news where this could get buried by any means. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but if you're going to be playing Russ Westbrook at 13K, your path, I think, to do it correctly and to probably do it somewhat optimally is probably going down to Bismack at 3,600. I have my issues. I think both Celtics centers jump out much more meaningfully for me, either Tristan or Robert Williams, but Zeller, Batatse, Lopez, Len, kind of off my board entirely. I'm not going to be touching any of them at this point because I have somebody down there that's a little bit cheaper, and Biyombo gives me a different build, and it makes it super easy to be able to play Sabonis, Westbrook, and then filling in the rest with value.
All right, so we just got a run of ownership here, and I don't know if it's fully reflecting the Biyombo news, but we just have to assume it is, so I can give it to you guys right now. We just paste it into my sheet, but it is, in fact, money time here. So I have a gold hat in honor of our gold rush going on that our pal EMAC, our old pal EMAC, told me about. I should wear my gold hat, so go use that promo code GOLDRUSH if you want to have these ownership projections for yourself every single day for all the sports that we have them for as well at Osmo.com/join. That promo code gets you 25% off your first month of all the Osmo Plus data. Top 5 on DraftKings. Number 1 is now going to be Evan Fournier at 52%. Number 2, Marcus Smart at 48%. Number 3, Domantas Sabonis at 47%. Number 4, Kemba Walker at 44%. And number 5, Justin Holiday at 41%. And here's a freebie for you guys. Holiday and McDermott not very far behind. So those guys, you could treat them as basically the same ownership. On FanDuel, the top 5, Marcus Smart at 61%. Number 2, Terry Rozier at 52%. Number 3, Domantas Sabonis at 51%. Number 4, Miles Bridges at 50%. And number 5, LaMelo Ball at 46%. And those are the chalk plays of the day. And I'm really thinking none of these stand out. I have to say the one thing that surprised me is that the Fournier and Smart ownership is flipped, because part of my strategy on the day has been trying to flip that for myself to get more Fournier. But let's talk about Marcus Smart real fast, Eric, because he is going to be a core play on both sides. How are you handling him as a guy who does seem like he just has to be in the optimal because there aren't other guys to go to at his position?
Yeah, love. I don't know any other way to say it. I think he's one of my favorite plays on the slate. It makes no sense to not be there for him. And I was kind of doing the same thing as you were. I always assumed Fournier was going to be the higher round of the two. And so I kind of was making my move on to Smart as a result. He's a little bit cheaper. As I said, the theme of the day for me, I understand that it's not optimal to do, but I'm making more room for Russell Westbrook on this kind of a slate, and I'll kind of live with the result of it. And that $200 can go to use now. Also over on FanDuel, definitely putting that to use, the huge disparity that they have between the two salaries. But at shooting guard on FanDuel, I have 100% of Marcus Smart, and I feel fine with that. But on DraftKings, you don't necessarily have to make that kind of a stand. I have more lineups over there anyway, and so that's kind of the reason that I'm going to a little bit heavier Smart as well. But Fournier, I don't really have any concerns over at this point in time. Like, I don't think he's a bad play by any means. I think he's a really, really good play that shows up in his ownership being, one of the highest owned dudes on the entire day, if not going to be the highest owned player. But I think just kind of being around the field or a little bit under kind of makes a pathway to get off of like more of that chalk. I think it's one of those guys I'd either want to be jamming or kind of be like around the field. I find a fade feels awful. Like a fade of Fournier feels awful on this slate.
Yeah, I would agree. We've seen Fournier have some upside recently. It's worth pointing out, though, Kemba Walker being back in certainly going to make the margins a little bit tougher for Fournier. But I think the thing with both guys really is that they're going to be getting mid to high 30s minutes, and that's something you can see. Obviously, Tatum is also going to be getting that benefit as well. But for Smart and for Fournier as well, like I think Fournier to me feels safer because he's going to be scoring and assisting on his court time, where Smart could easily just be out there and not doing a ton. But because both guys are going to see so many minutes, like Marcus Smart could have 6 stocks today and it wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world. And I think to me, that's sort of the main part of how I'm viewing it. And I'll tell you guys now, I am also giving a 50% exposure cap to Bismack Biyombo just because I don't think people will get there. And I think he does make it easier to afford pretty much everything else on the slate. So that is going to be my Bismack number. I don't know if you've landed on one, Eric, but that is to me, a lot of Bismack, but hey, what are you going to do here on this slate?
I have so much Bismack Biyombo. This is not what I was looking forward to doing on this show. I have given a rally pep talk. I am now playing a ton of Bismack Biyombo. I didn't sign up for this shit. This has been forced upon me. Here we are. I'm capping him. I'm just going to cap Bismack at this point in time. I'm pretty okay with it. I mean, I'm going to be over the field right now. I think 20%. I don't know. That still feels like it's maybe a little bit high. Maybe the field can react that much. And I get that he's not going to look that great by projection standards. But there's a large range of outcomes for what those minutes can be. We at least know he's going to touch the minutes for 4 minutes, or touch the floor for 4 minutes. So that's exciting to me. He's going to play a couple minutes at the top, and we'll kind of let it see what happens from there. But in terms of guys that are underneath 4K, I think he's definitely the one I feel the most comfortable being overweight to the field now.
I got some Ish Smith in my lineups now too, because of getting less Sumner. Sumner to me is down to 25%. So that's, I think, still fitting what you were talking about, Eric, going to be probably more than the fields ends up with, or at least I guess close to whatever the field ends up with. And I think that's a reasonable amount of Sumner now. But yeah, Bismack Biyombo is going to be one that makes lineups work. And if you are going to be there, be prepared for the joys of this all. We also got some super chats that one of this, A. Dean saying, Eric, my 3-year-old just heard you drop the F-bomb and now he won't stop repeating it. Any advice? I'm going to give A. Dean here 5 seconds to put your hands over this child's ears. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fuck that kid. He should be able to know. You should know by now what the F word sounds like. But Eric, any rebuttals for you to Adine?
Adine, shut up. You're fine. He's fine. He's going to hear it a lot in his life. I guarantee it. It's going to happen. I mean, it's probably not going to go great when your 5-year-old goes to kindergarten and tells the teacher to whatever. But at this point in time, I don't know. It was just it was a rallying cry. We're all ready to go. We're in good form, high spirits, full hearts, clear eyes, can't lose.
Jordan Reeves asking Gafford, Bertans, or
Clear as
McDermott for FanDuel cash. Boy, that is an ugly grouping. For the ownership, I think it has to be McDermott.
Yep.
Justin Alberto asking, do you think Robin Lopez is worth a shot in tourneys, and is it a must to leave money on the table? I don't think it's a must by any stretch. I still have a 45 or 49.5 salary cap, or minimum rather, on DraftKings today. I think it's unlikely for it. I guess it's not unlikely, but I think I wouldn't go much lower than 49,000 because I just don't think the value, the pay down options are going to be quite as good. But Eric, how are you feeling about Robin Lopez? I got him a little bit, not feeling great about it, but you're not going to feel great about a lot of plays. So I think that's the main thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, I have 10% of Robin Lopez. I think that that's about appropriate. I have a little bit more Daniel Gafford, and trying to center is really a spot where you can get some high upside on some of these dudes in limited minutes. And so Bismack Biyombo, put him in that grouping. Daniel Gafford, Robin Lopez, Alex Len. If you want to play a 1%er in Goga Batadze, Domantas Sabonis gets in foul trouble. That's the guy who's coming out of the pit and going to be there. So I think even having a share or two of him sprinkled in isn't the craziest thing. I mean, it's borderline crazy, but I love crazy.
We got another super chat here. AD also has another follow-up too. Actually, that is a super chat I'm going to get to. I don't have a kid. I was joking, but DK single entry, Rozier, Brissett, or Ball. So I'm glad I didn't actually.
I knew it was a troll a little bit, but I played into it. It was a lot of fun.
DK single entry, Rozier and Brissett, or Ball and Rui. I would go Ball and Rui personally.
Yeah, I'd probably going to go Ball Rui there too. I like Rozier a lot on FanDuel. It makes it very, very easy to be able to build with him there. But if we're going to look at this specifically, just that 2v2, I'm going to go Ball and Rui as well. I love Rui Hachimura. I'm such a mark for him. I love that man. First Japanese basketball player, I believe.
I think Japanese American, because Yuta Watanabe.
Japanese American. Okay.
But I would say though, so Rui, the thing with me is he's one of those guys that I think does get kind of like Marcus Smart, gets one of those little upticks where he's going to be playing more run today. Like we haven't projected for 34.4 minutes. It wouldn't shock me to see him get to 38, 39, maybe even 40, just because like, what are they going to play instead at power forward? They're not going to play Chandler Hudson at this point. They're not going to go. I think Garrison Matthews has a good shot of just being exercised entirely from the rotation. So Rui, I think to me is a guy that, if he doesn't do well in 38 minutes or 35 minutes, sucks. But I think at least he's going to be getting that run like he is a starter, and that's kind of enough on this slate for me. Let's see. We got Soul Dope asking thoughts on Sumner for FanDuel. I think you have to downgrade him a little bit still, but if he makes your lineup work and nobody else does, I think that to me is the main reason to play Sumner today.
That is a very sharp take because it's the correct take.
Let's see. Another one from Soul Dope asking Westbrook and McBuckets versus Melo or LaMelo and Sabonis. Oh boy, that's a tough one. I would go LaMelo and Sabonis just because I do think LaMelo has sort of a ceiling that can be in the range of Westbrook. And that is to me part of why I got a little more LaMelo today. But Eric on FanDuel, Westbrook and McBuckets or Melo. I keep saying Melo. I feel like LaMelo has to be LaMelo and Sabonis.
Give me the Westbrook and McBucket side of it. I'm making my bed with him and I'm fine with it.
I feel like there's only one Melo. We can't be giving LaMelo just Melo vibes. Anything in the premium Slack, just making sure we're covering everything we can here for people who've asked questions. If you have any final questions, get them in. Jay Freed's asking just me, Bismack missing on the boom bust. I think that must have been an old one, but it should be updated now with Bismack's properly reflected rates. And on DraftKings, there's a freebie for you guys. It's projected to be in the Apple 24% of the time. So keep that in mind. Also, candidly for me too, I think Bismack's gonna be a lot higher owned in the big tournament on DK than the max 20 entry ones, because that's normally how that goes. Let's see, Steve Leibovitz, no good questions there. DK gonna have any overlay? All right, so let's talk about the Celtics players really fast, because we've mentioned Fournier and Smart, sort of the reasons to go into them. But Kemba, I agree with you, a core play for me. Tatum, I think a less appealing option than Sabonis, but not by a lot. I think getting to near 50% of those guys is one of my goals on the day. But how are you feeling about Tatum and I guess Kemba as well? I know you've already talked about Kemba at some length, but just give the people your take one more time.
Yeah, so Kemba Walker, I think he just kind of gets overlooked, and coming off of I tried to get that guy right in the bubble constantly, and he was just so bad. Last playoff time, I'm looking at this basically as a playoff game. I think he goes out and kind of asserts himself a little bit. Going to be a little bit more of a beneficiary here with Jaylen Brown off the floor as well. I think it's showing up about appropriate in ownership, but a guy that I'm happy to be making a stand with, just going over the field, living with the result of it. We only have so many choices on this slate by any means, but there's a big minutes upside for him to get 36 plus, played 38, 40. He's been playing some meaningful minutes of late in meaningful games. Happy to be over the field on 44% on DraftKings.
Let's see. No other good questions in here. Somebody asking for freebies for FanDuel. I'll just say the boom bust number for Biyombo, because that just seems equitable to give that. On FanDuel, the boom bust number looks like he'll be in the optimal 21% of the time on FanDuel. So that is another cheap price tag there, and may seem counterintuitive to play Biyombo on FanDuel, but given what an ugly center slate it is, you can probably pay for everything else if you do play Biyombo there.
Yeah, I'm riding with it. If it burns me at this point, it does, but I don't know what that ownership will look like. I'm willing to find out in order to get different.
What about Keelan Martin? Keelan Martin's one of those dudes I think gets completely squeezed from the rotation. Yeah. Hard to imagine him getting meaningful run, even if he does play, but you're on the same page, Eric?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I wish he was a thing. I've been playing a lot of him recently in the last couple slates, and these have been meaningful games down the stretch for Indiana, and yet they've been playing him out there for big minutes. But Brogdon being back, I know LeVert being out, like I could see it working out in a path for him, but you would need a lot of things to go wrong. You'd need Sabonis to actually be hurt. You'd need some other things to like really break your way for Keelan Martin to be a guy who played double-digit minutes in this spot. Even in 15 minutes, I don't think, because he's not 3K, he's, a little bit higher than that, makes it tough for me to get to him.
All right. And we got seconds left to lock by the time you guys hear this. So get those lineups in if you haven't yet. And let's see, Rui over 13.5 points. I would take that over on Rui, over 13.5, but not a high confidence one by any stretch. And it looks like we are locked. So Eric, give the people one good plug for yourself. We crammed in about as much as possible here, and make sure you are following and liking the channel, subscribed as well, because we are going to have NBA slates for our NBA shows for all of the playoff slates out there for the most part. So stay tuned here, but Eric, give the people all the plugs that you can possibly handle.
Yeah, best of luck. We've got the Slate Starter articles every single morning. I'll just kind of be getting your process going. I'll be releasing those every single morning when you wake up. Check that out. Kind of get my impressions of the slate. We'll be coming into Showdown a little bit. We'll still have some 4 gamers hopefully coming up here for this first round of the NBA playoffs, but lots of money out for grabs. We'll be on the tip-off together, we'll be on the tip-off together tomorrow. Yep. Will we not? Yeah, that'll be fantastic. Can't wait for that. Normal stuff always happens that show, but best of luck, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for your open ears and for being able to really come together. I feel like today was a really, really good day for all of us.
Yeah, so follow at Eric Lindquist, follow at Chris Spags as well. I make sure to tweet my links or retweet them really at this point for whenever I'm doing MLB shows, because I'm doing a lot of MLB content. So if you're looking for a friendly face to help you go churn through those waters of MLB, come join Greg and I tomorrow on the MLB Strategy Show. That's 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. East Coast time. Follow at Osmo_com as well to keep your eyes peeled for all the content we have, as well as some flash giveaways. And good luck tonight, guys. We'll see you guys again soon. Ooh, did not expect Bismack Biyombo at 50% to be the that happened now.